Understood. I'm ready to write Chapter 1. Fog on mile marker 12. In full cinematic first-person horror style, targeting 1,300 words. Following all your rules. I'll start the script now. The fog came fast, thicker than anything I'd ever seen, swallowing the headlights before I even had time to blink. One moment, mile marker 12 was just an empty stretch of highway. The next, it felt like I was driving into a wall of gray, wet and cold, pressing against the windshield like it had weight. I slowed, gripping the wheel tighter, my pulse drumming in my ears, because something about this felt off, wrong in a way I couldn't put into words. I'd driven this route 1,000 nights. I knew the bends, the cracks in the asphalt, the way the trees leaned over the shoulder as if watching. But tonight, nothing looked familiar. The fog muted everything. The radio static, the faint hum of the engine, even my own breathing seemed swallowed. My rear view mirror was useless, only a blur of pale light reflecting back at me. There was a chill creeping into the car, even though the heater was running full blast. It made my skin crawl. I told myself it was just the weather, that a sudden fog bank could appear overnight, but my gut wouldn't let it rest. I caught a movement, or maybe I imagined it, a shadow darting across the lanes, gone before I could react. My eyes scanned the edges of the road. Nothing. No deer, no raccoon, no car. Nothing. I thought about turning around, calling it a night, but the thought of backing up into this gray wall made my chest tighten. I pressed on. The beam of my headlights cut a narrow path ahead. But even at full brightness, it seemed to vanish just 20 feet in front of me. I realized I was gripping the wheel too hard, knuckles white, and tried to take a breath. Then I heard it, the soft, almost imperceptible hiss of tires on asphalt. Not mine, something else. My head snapped to the side, scanning, but the fog was a solid wall. I flicked on the overhead lights. Nothing. Silence. My own tires' rhythm seemed louder than ever. Each rotation a small, frantic drumbeat in the fog. I tried the radio, any channel, but only static answered. Static that seemed to whisper, almost in cadence with my heartbeat. I remembered the old stories from the dispatchers about this stretch. Truckers had reported strange lights, fleeting figures at night, calls from empty roads. I'd always dismissed them as drunken tales, overactive imaginations, the usual small-town horror stories. Tonight, I wasn't so sure. I realized, maybe for the first time, that sometimes the stories have teeth. I glanced at the mile marker through the fog. 12. It seemed farther away than it should have been. My car's speedometer read 45, and it took minutes to pass what should have been a brief stretch. Time itself felt wrong. I started counting the seconds between the hum of my engine and the softest I thought I'd heard before. I lost count after 3 breaths, unsure if the fog made sound impossible to measure, or if I was losing track of myself. Something moved just ahead. I caught a glint, a reflection, maybe from a license plate, though it shouldn't have been there. My stomach twisted. I slowed, squinting through the fog, trying to focus on the shape. A figure? No, a car? My eyes played tricks, but the feeling was real. Something was there, just beyond the reach of my headlights. I reached for the radio again, fingers trembling. Dispatch, this is Unit 12. Do you copy? My voice sounded alien to me. Too loud, too sharp. No response. Static. I tried again, louder, but only the white noise returned. It was then I realized there was no other sound. No wind. No distant hum of traffic. No wildlife. Just the hiss, my tires, and the weight of the fog pressing in on me. The shape moved closer, almost in rhythm with me. I could swear it matched my lane exactly, keeping pace without lights, without sound, without presence. I wanted to believe it was a hallucination, the exhaustion of another graveyard shift playing tricks. But it felt deliberate. It felt like awareness, like it was waiting for me to notice. I forced myself to keep moving. Every instinct screamed to stop, to turn back, to call it in, but the road stretched on, empty except for the weight in the fog, and the shape kept pace. I remember gripping the wheel, knuckles aching, feeling that I wasn't just driving through fog. I was being led, drawn towards something unseen, something patient. Then, just for a moment, the fog thinned, and I caught sight of it in the headlights. A car? No. The outline of a figure. Human, maybe, but distorted, stretched in ways that made my brain twitch with unease. It wasn't running, wasn't walking. It was just there, floating in the gray. I blinked, and it was gone. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was my eyes, the exhaustion, the isolation. Mile marker 12 is lonely, yes, but not like this, not with the road disappearing under your tires, and the world reduced to gray nothingness. My chest tightened as the fog thickened again, swallowing the roadside, the trees, and whatever that thing was. Minutes or hours, I couldn't tell, passed. I was driving through a void, the highway a thin strip of certainty in an uncertain world. The shape came again, closer this time, just beyond the reach of my lights. I realized it was following me, not just moving alongside. Following, waiting. I forced my foot down, trying to escape, but the fog swallowed the road ahead. Every mile felt longer than the last. I caught a sign, half buried in the mist. Next service is 15 miles. It wasn't supposed to be here. I've driven this road countless times. The numbers, the distances, they didn't add up. Panic gripped me. I tried to call in, but the radio remained dead. My phone? No signal. Just me, the fog, and that thing, whatever it was, pacing me silently. Then it happened. The headlights flickered. Not the car, my mind. Or maybe the fog itself was playing tricks. Shadows stretched across the road, the trees leaning closer than they should. I thought I saw faces press against a mist, pale and impossible, vanishing when I blinked. My stomach churned, a rising fear I couldn't name. Something about the fog wasn't natural. It wasn't just weather. I slowed, trying to think, trying to rationalize, but nothing made sense. I realized I had no idea how I got here. No idea how long I'd been on this stretch. The clock in the car was useless, swallowed in the gray. I thought about the stories, the warnings, and I understood I wasn't alone on this road. And whatever followed didn't belong in the world I knew. The fog pressed closer, thick and suffocating. I could barely see the hood of my own car. The figure, or shadow, was closer now, lingering just outside the reach of the headlights. I felt its awareness, patient, deliberate, as though it knew my every thought. I tried to speak, to challenge it, but my voice caught in my throat. Then, without warning, it vanished. No shape, no movement, no sound. Just the fog, thick and silent. My pulse was in my ears, my hands shaking, gripping the wheel like a lifeline. I forced myself to keep moving, to escape, though I had no direction, no reference points. The road stretched endlessly, swallowed in gray. I don't know how long I drove like that. Minutes? Hours? Time dissolved into fog. And then I saw it. A flash of something unnatural on the shoulder. Just for a second, I couldn't tell if it was a reflection, a person, or something else entirely. But it was enough to make my skin crawl, my heart hammer, and my mind scream. Mile marker 12 was behind me, though I wasn't sure how I had passed it. The fog thickened again, swallowing the headlights, swallowing the road, swallowing reality itself. And in that moment, I understood this was no ordinary fog. It wasn't just mist. It was a presence, patient, watching, following, waiting. And I was trapped in it. I pressed on, knowing that somewhere ahead, maybe a mile, maybe an eternity, I would have to confront what followed me, or would continue to follow forever. My hands ached, my heart burned, and the fog pressed against the glass like fingers. I could feel it, almost breathing. And I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't going to leave this stretch of highway the same. Every instinct told me to stop, to turn, to call it in. But I couldn't. Not yet. Because if I looked away, if I hesitated, the fog would swallow more than the road. And I wasn't ready to disappear. Not yet. The road ahead was nothing but gray. And somewhere inside me, I knew the fog had only just begun. It appeared just as I thought the fog might swallow me entirely. A shape moving across the road, and I slammed the brakes so hard the car shuddered. My chest fell hollow, my lungs burning as I stared at the blur in the headlights. For a moment, I thought it was a deer or some other animal, but something about it was wrong. Too fluid, too deliberate. And when I peered closer, The asphalt behind it was untouched. No tracks. Nothing. I swallowed hard and flicked the high beams, sweeping them from left to right. Trying to catch it, the fog swirled, a gray tide that made the world impossible to read. My eyes strained against the thickness, trying to discern the edges of that figure. It wasn't big, not human-sized, not exactly animal-sized either. Just wrong. I saw its movement again, a gliding, almost hovering quality, and my stomach twisted. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my shaking hands, but the radio spat static like it was warning me. I murmured to myself, telling myself I'd seen things before on night patrol, that exhaustion makes monsters out of shadows. But the rational part of me, the part trained for observation, whispered something else. It was alive, and it was aware. I pressed the accelerator lightly, trying to follow without running it over. But the shape didn't flee. It moved steadily, as if it knew the road better than I did. I noticed something strange. The more I focused on it, the more the fog seemed to pulse. Every beat of my heart made the mist thicken, like the road itself was breathing. My headlights caught brief flashes of it disappearing, then reappearing further ahead. Every time I thought I was catching up, it would vanish again, leaving only the empty asphalt behind. I tried calling dispatch. Unit 12, do you copy? I've got, I don't know, something on the road. My voice cracked, and static swallowed my words. No answer. The radio didn't even buzz, just that same thick, humming white noise. I realized then I hadn't heard another car in minutes. Nothing. The world beyond my windshield didn't exist except the gray fog and that impossible shape. I followed it for what felt like miles, though the road had no familiar markers. I remember catching the hint of a glint, something reflecting my headlights, a flash of white or silver, then gone again. My fingers tightened on the wheel, sweat slipping down my temple. Every instinct screamed at me to stop, but I couldn't. Something deeper, a dread I couldn't name, pushed me forward. Then it turned, a sudden, unnatural pivot, like it knew exactly where the road bent. I blinked, and the curve of the asphalt was wrong. I should have been approaching a familiar bend, but it felt like I was moving in circles. My stomach lurched. The shape had led me somewhere unfamiliar, into a part of this highway I had never seen in all my years of night patrols. I slowed, my headlights sweeping the fog, trying to get a clear look, and then I realized something that made my blood run cold. It had no features I could name, no face, no limbs, not even a body I could define, just a dark outline, a suggestion of form against the gray. And yet I felt its eyes on me, felt the awareness of it calculating, measuring, waiting for something I didn't understand. I pressed the horn once, a sharp, startled sound that echoed in the fog, but it didn't flinch. It didn't run. It kept moving, sliding just ahead of me. And I noticed something worse. Behind it, the asphalt was pristine, no tracks, no evidence it had ever been there. It was impossible. And yet I saw it. I knew it. I tried to shake off the rising panic. Maybe it was a trick of the fog, my mind filling in shapes and shadows. But my gut told me differently. I felt my pulse hammering my ears, my breathing short and uneven. Every instinct screamed at me to escape. Yet I couldn't stop watching, couldn't stop following. Something about it demanded observation, demanded acknowledgement. I edged closer, careful not to get too near. My headlights cut through the mist, revealing only fleeting glimpses, like a shadow in a funhouse mirror. It didn't move like an animal. No bounding, no crawling. It just glided, silent and deliberate, every motion precise. My chest tightened with fear I couldn't name, and anxiety I had never felt on patrol before. Then I saw it again, sharper this time, a fraction closer. I could almost make out the curve of what might have been ahead, but it didn't have a face I could identify. Just darkness, as if it had absorbed the light around it. I felt my stomach twist. What was it? And more importantly, why did it move with purpose on this empty highway? I tried to call out to it, even though I didn't expect an answer. Hey, stop. My voice sounded thin, frail, swallowed by the fog. No response, just the hiss of the tires on asphalt. and the faint pulse of fog pressing against the car like it had mass, like it could push me off the road if it wanted. The shape paused, just for a moment, like it had heard me. I slammed my foot on the brake, and it halted too. My headlights cut the fog, and I swear I saw it till it formed slightly like curiosity or amusement. My heart lurched. I couldn't explain why, but I knew it was intelligent, calculating, and waiting. I edged the car forward, to try and keep it in view, and that's when I noticed the road itself had changed. The markings weren't straight anymore. The lines seemed stretched, warped, bending impossibly in the mist. I felt my hands shake violently. Was it the fog? Was it me losing my mind? Or was this shape doing something to the road itself? I had no answers, only the rising panic in my chest. I followed it again cautiously. It moved ahead, and each time I caught a glimpse, I felt the fog tighten, thickening with every motion, swallowing the world behind me. And then a sound, low, almost musical, almost human, but impossible to place. A hum, like breath through metal, drifting along the road, guiding me forward. I forced myself to keep moving. I had to understand it, had to see where it led. Each mile, each bend in the fog, my fear escalated. My thoughts spiraled. What if it disappears completely? What if I'm alone in this gray nothingness? What if it's waiting for me to make a mistake? Then I saw something that made me grip the wheel until my knuckles whitened. A tire track appeared behind it. Faint, barely visible. But it wasn't normal. Not like any tire track I'd ever seen. No pattern, no width, nothing that matched a car or motorcycle. Just a groove, pressed lightly into the asphalt, as if it had weight, but not substance. And it ended abruptly. No continuation, no origin. Just there. I swallowed hard and forced the accelerator. The shape moved ahead, gliding, leading me deeper into the fog. My pulse was a drumbeat in my ears. Every instinct screamed at me to stop, but the curiosity, no, the compulsion was stronger. I had to know. I had to see where it went. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time had no meaning. And then it vanished again, as suddenly as it appeared, leaving nothing behind. The fog swallowed it completely. I came to a halt, headlights cutting a cone of pale light, empty asphalt in front of me. I scanned frantically. Nothing. No shape. No track. Just silence. And the fog, pressing in, patient, alive. I realized then that I had no way of knowing if it was still out there. Watching. Waiting. Following. And a thought struck me that I couldn't shake. The fog itself seemed alive, moving in rhythm with the shape, pulsating, breathing, aware. I forced a shaky breath and pressed on, my hands trembling, heart hammering. Mile marker 13 appeared through the mist, just barely. My headlights cut the number in half as I passed. I exhaled slowly, telling myself I had escaped, that it was gone, but the emptiness behind me felt wrong. Too complete, too aware. I glanced into the rear-view mirror. My own reflection stared back, pale and wide-eyed, but behind it, I thought I saw something. A shadow gliding silently, almost at the edge of the glass. I blinked. Gone. I pressed on, knowing that somewhere ahead, whatever this was, it hadn't stopped. And I had a sinking certainty I would see it again, just beyond the reach of my headlights, waiting for me to chase, waiting for me to follow. The road stretched on, gray and empty, and the figure, or whatever it was still out there. The radio crackled again, louder this time, and my heart jumped. At first, I thought it was static, but then I heard it. My name, Unit 12, Unit 12. It was faint, broken, almost drowned in white noise, but unmistakable. I froze, hands gripping the wheels so tight my knuckles ached. No other units were supposed to be on this stretch. I was alone, always alone. I twisted the dial, trying to find a clearer channel, but the voice didn't change. It kept calling, patient, deliberate, repeating my name in a slow, deliberate cadence. My stomach dropped. It wasn't the dispatchers, not their usual clipped tones, not the radio's familiar rhythm. This was something else, something that knew me. The fog pressed against the windshield, thicker than before, muffling even the hum of the engine. I lowered the volume and leaned closer, straining to hear. Who's there? I whispered into the cab, but no one answered. Only my own voice bounced back at me from the fog, distorted, alien. The voice on the radio answered away, murmuring again, Unit 12? Softer now, almost like it was breathing. I tried the scanner, flipping through channels, hoping for interference, for a signal, for anything that could explain it. But every channel hummed with the same broken whisper of my name. And then I realized something that made my pulse spike. The voice seemed to come from all directions. From the dashboard, from the speakers, from outside the car. I turned my head slowly, scanning the foggy edges of the highway. But there was nothing. Nothing at all. I told myself I was imagining it. I tried to breathe, counting to 10, telling myself I'd been alone on long night shift before, chasing shadows, chasing phantom cars, chasing deer or raccoons in the fog. But this was different. The radio didn't imitate me. It didn't mimic sounds. It knew me, my name, my call sign, the same one I'd been repeating into the mic all night. I lowered the volume again, leaning back in the seat, trying to convince myself I was losing it. But then it changed. The voice got closer, sharper, urgent. Unit 12. Don't stop, my chest seized. The words were so simple, so chillingly direct. Don't stop. Don't stop what? Driving? Thinking? Breathing? The fog pressed against the glass. Thick and wet, like it could seep inside the cab if I lingered too long. I swallowed hard and flicked on the interior lights. My own hands, pale and shaking, looked wrong in the harsh glow. Shadows stretched along the dashboard and the seats, moving in ways that didn't match the car's interior. My reflection in the rear-view mirror jerked slightly, and I thought I saw a shape crouch behind me. I blinked. Nothing. Just a fog. Just a gray, suffocating fog. I forced my foot down, urging the car forward. I needed to escape this stretch of road, to find something familiar. Anything. My eyes flicked to the mile markers. They were all wrong. I had passed 12, yes, but now I wasn't sure how far I'd gone. Numbers seemed to blur, stretching in ways they shouldn't. And the radio whispered again. Unit 12, faster. Follow faster? Follow what? My pulse rattled my ribcage as I glanced into the mist ahead. I couldn't see the shape anymore, not yet, but I knew it was there, waiting. I tried the mic again, fumbling, my voice cracking. Dispatched, you copy? I'm on mile marker. Nothing. Only static. Only my name, drawn out, patient. And then, faintly, a laugh. Not human. Not fully. Just a short, jagged exhale that felt wet. Alive. Too close. I jerked my head around, scanning the fog, the roadside, even the trees leaning too close to the asphalt. Nothing moved except the gray, breathing world outside my headlights. I gripped the wheel tighter, feeling sweat drip down my temples. My thoughts scattered. Was this a prank? No. Impossible. I was alone. Not even another officer was on this stretch. No trucks, no cars, no passing headlights. Just me in the fog and that voice, that name, and it didn't sound far away. It sounded like it was inside the car, coiling around the seats, crawling into my ears, threading itself through my thoughts. Then it happened. The shape appeared again, briefly, in the distance. Not much to see, just a blur at the edge of my headlights. But the radio screamed my name in response. Unit 12. Don't. The word cut off like it couldn't finish. And the shape shifted, moved unnaturally, gliding without tires touching the road, moving like it was not bound by physics at all. My chest tightened. I pressed the accelerator, pushing forward, trying to close the distance, but the fog thickened instantly, swallowing the headlights as if the road itself was resisting me. I tried reasoning with myself, muttering under my breath. It's a trick of the fog. Your mind is tired. It's just isolation. But the moment I said it, the voice on the radio changed tone. Softer, but insistent. Unit 12 alone wrong. My stomach sank. Alone? Wrong? I could feel it. The weight of the fog, the awareness of whatever this was, pushing into my thoughts, rearranging them, teasing my fear. I leaned forward, pressing the mic against my lips again. I need another interruption, another sharp, wet breath, almost human, almost not, echoing through the speakers. My hands shook, and I realized I had forgotten to blink. My eyes burned, trying to track the shape that flitted through the mist. And for a brief, horrifying moment, I swore the figure was mimicking the voice. My name whispered back at me, but twisted, elongated, distorted in a way that made my stomach churn. I shook my head, trying to dislodge the thought, but it came again. Unit 12, follow, don't stop. The words slid into my ears, into my chest, into my bones. My breath caught, my eyes darting across the fog. Was it guiding me, mocking me, or warning me? I didn't know, and I didn't dare stop to find out. The radio crackled violently now, almost screaming, as if in frustration. My name repeated over and over, overlapping, layered, sometimes whispered, sometimes shouted, and then suddenly silence. Thick, suffocating silence. The kind that makes you aware of every heartbeat, every shallow breath, every tremble in your hands. I exhaled slowly, relief washing over me for a fraction of a second, but it was brief. A new sound emerged behind the silence. Not the hiss of tires, not the hum of the engine, but a dragging sound, soft and wet, following me through the fog. I jerked my head around. Nothing, but the radio buzzed again, faint, urgent. Unit 12, you're close. My stomach sank. Close to what? The shape? The fog? Or someplace I didn't want to find? I pressed on, headlights cutting weakly through the gray. The world seemed unreal, stretched, warped. Every tree, every marker, every shadow felt like it existed just to disorient me. And the radio, oh, the radio, kept my name threaded through it. Each whisper raising my pulse, framed my nerves. I felt the weight of the fog, the shape, the voice, all coiling around me, pressing me forward. I remember my training. Stay calm, observe. But calm wasn't an option anymore. Fear had teeth, and it was gnawing through my chest. And yet beneath it, something else thrummed, a compulsion I couldn't resist. I had to see. I had to follow. The fog shifted. The road stretched. The shape vanished. And the radio whispered once more, slower, deliberate, almost satisfied. Unit 12, always following. My stomach dropped. Following. Not alone. Not random. It was aware. And somewhere ahead, I knew my next step would matter more than any before. I gripped the wheel and exhaled shakily. The road, the fog, the voice, the shape, they weren't letting me go. And deep down, I knew the night had only just begun. I pressed the accelerator, the tires humming against the slick asphalt, and the fog swallowed the headlights in a way that made the road ahead vanish completely. One moment, I could see the faint white line in the center of the highway. The next, it dissolved into gray nothingness. I blinked hard, trying to clear my eyes, but it wasn't my vision failing. It was a fog, thick and wet, curling around the car like smoke from some ancient fire. I had no choice but to drive forward, even though a gnawing part of me wanted to slam on the brakes and stay put forever. The radio crackled faintly, low static, and then silence. My name wasn't whispered this time. Not yet, but the absence of the voice felt heavy, almost malignant. It pressed against my chest, as if the air itself remembered me, knew me, and decided to make me uncomfortable in ways I couldn't fight. I gripped the wheel so tightly that the leather dug into my palms, sweat running down my wrists, and tried to focus on the road, or what should have been the road. Everything around me had turned featureless. The fog wasn't just fog anymore. It was a wall, a shroud, thick enough that I could almost touch it through the windshield. I could hear the tires slapping against wet pavement, but the sound didn't match what I felt. It was hollow, echoing, like the car was driving through some giant, empty cavern instead of an open highway. My stomach knotted, a premonition curling cold around my spine. Then I saw it at the edge of the headlights. Something, or someone, moved just past my peripheral vision. I jerked my head, trying to catch it, but the moment I looked directly, it was gone. The fog wasn't just hiding it. It was bending it around itself, like it had rules that I didn't understand, rules that didn't include me. My heart pounded, slow and uneven, and for a split second, I thought I could hear breathing behind me, shallow, wet, and too big to be human. I told myself it was a trick. I had been on night shifts before, alone on stretches of highway that cut through nothing but trees and darkness. I had chased deer, raccoons, drunk drivers. I had been scared before, but this wasn't any of that. The air itself felt alive, pushing, shaping me, making the car hum with energy that had nothing to do with the engine. I turned slightly, trying to catch a glimpse of what followed. Headlights flashed briefly against something in the distance, something tall, black, featureless. And then the world shifted. The road under my tires changed. I could feel it, feel the asphalt stretching, tilting, rearranging itself with every rotation of the wheels. I blinked, certain my eyes were deceiving me. But the fog laughed, soft, low, like the memory of a voice I couldn't place. The radio popped back to life. Not a whisper, not static, but a sentence drawn out in broken cadence. Unit 12 vanished. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My pulse doubled, my breath caught. Vanish. Not a warning. A description. Or maybe a command. I swallowed hard, my hands trembling, and pressed on. The patrol car felt wrong beneath me. Not mechanically, though the engine sputtered, lights flickering, but spatially. It was as if the vehicle existed in two layers at once. The one I could see and another invisible one, layered over it, moving independently, twisting the world around me. The fog clung to the windshield, inside the car, inside my head. Every reflection, every shadow became uncertain. I could barely tell what was real anymore. Ahead, a light appeared, or maybe it didn't. I couldn't trust my own eyes. A faint glow diffused, but it seemed to move with me, maintaining a distance that felt deliberate. I pressed the accelerator harder. My stomach lurched. And then, suddenly, nothing. No road. No fog. No headlights. Only an emptiness, so complete it rang in my ears. I opened my mouth to speak, to call out, to scream, but no sound came. Not in the car. Not in the fog. Not anywhere. It was as if the world had muted me, removed me from existence while leaving my body in place. My hands were still on the wheel, heart hammering, and yet I felt disconnected, as if I were floating outside the car, watching myself drive toward nothing. The radio erupted violently, static tearing through the silence, and then my name. But this time, it was multiple voices layered, overlapping, distorted. Unit 12. Don't stop, leave, follow. They spoke faster, fragmented, like they were arguing, debating. My pulse raced uncontrollably. My eyes darted everywhere. Nothing. Only gray nothingness. Only the car humming beneath me, idling in a space that seemed wider than it should. I tried braking, pressing with all my weight. The pedal sank. The car responded, but it didn't slow. It moved as if it had momentum independent of my input. Panic clawed at my chest. My hands left the wheel for a brief moment, reaching for the door, but the fog seemed to lean in closer, pressing, bending around me. I wanted to stop. I had to stop, but the world wouldn't allow it. And then, from somewhere behind me, or maybe beside me, the fog shifted again. A shape emerged, featureless, humanoid, impossibly tall, drifting above the asphalt like it had no legs at all. It didn't move naturally. It glided, stretching and bending, moving in a way that tore at my sense of physics. I blinked, and it was closer. I pressed the accelerator again. It mirrored me, closer, faster. My stomach pitched, my hands white-knuckled on the wheel. The car's lights flickered violently. Inside, the dashboard glowed, then went dark. The engine sputtered. I could hear a low thrum, like the fog itself had a heartbeat. The radio screamed again, unintelligible now. Static and voices layered together in a chaotic symphony of sound. And I realized with a cold certainty that I wasn't just driving into the fog. I was disappearing into it. Slowly, deliberately, the world was unmaking me, leaving only the car behind. Outside, the fog thickened to an impossible density. Headlights vanished. Trees, markers, the very road, they dissolved into nothing. And yet the car moved, humming, idling, lights flickering, untouched by anything human. It was as if the vehicle had become its own entity, separate from me, existing where I no longer fully existed. A last thought clawed through my fear. If anyone came looking, if dispatch checked the cameras, the patrol logs, they would find the car, alone, idling, lights twitching in the fog, and I would be gone, swallowed completely. a name whisper on the radio, echoing through an invisible world that no one else could see. Unit 12. I felt it then, the final tug, not through the steering wheel, not through my body, but through my mind. The fog wasn't just around me. It was inside me, bending perception, stretching awareness. Every sense twisted, every instinct screamed. I couldn't fight it, and I didn't know if I wanted to. Part of me, something I couldn't name, was drawn forward toward the emptiness, toward the vanishing point, toward whatever waited beyond the world I had known. The last thing I registered before it swallowed me entirely was a car, humming, lights flickering in the thick gray nothing, and the radio, whispering my name once more, patient, deliberate, and then silence. No headlights, no tires, no me, only the patrol car, alone, idling in a world that ceased to exist. The night was so still it pressed against my chest. The kind of silence that isn't comforting. It's heavy, thick, like the air itself is holding its breath. I was driving the usual stretch, the one that curls through abandoned warehouses and cracked streetlights, and everything felt off. The city usually hums at night. Sirens, distant engines, a lone dog barking. Tonight, nothing, not a sound, not even the usual hum of neon signs flickering in empty windows. Then I saw it, a signal at the curb, blinking, red, steady, then gone. I slowed instinctively, scanning the street, and caught another one 2 blocks down. Red again. But the strange thing was, it wasn't just blinking. It seemed to shift, almost like it moved of its own volition, side to side, up and down, in a rhythm that didn't match any traffic pattern I'd ever seen. My stomach tightened. The thought crossed my mind that maybe I was tired, seeing things, but the crisp night air biting through the open window told me otherwise. I parked on the side and leaned forward, squinting. Streetlights above me cast long shadows, but none of the usual shapes, cars, dumpsters, trash bins, were moving. Nothing. And yet the signals moved, almost like they were alive. I reached for the radio, thinking a late-night crew might be playing a prank. Static snapping as I flicked the channel. Nothing. Dead air. The only thing alive here were the signals, blinking at me, guiding me or warning me. I took a step closer to the curb, boots crunching against gravel. The signals pulsed in sequence, drawing a path down the empty street. I followed instinct, walking, curious despite myself. My heart thudded painfully. Something in me wanted to turn back, wanted the warmth of the station, the hum of the generator, the noise of reality. But another part of me couldn't look away. They were moving, yes, but toward what and why? The air seemed colder here. Not cold enough to freeze, but sharp, slicing through my jacket, biting my ears and nose. My breath came out in fog, dissipating almost instantly in the still night. I stepped closer to the signals again. A few were shaped like cones, others like squares, almost like traffic lights melted and reformed. I shook my head, telling myself it was some wiring fault, a projection of fatigue. Yet, as I reached out, the signal nearest me shifted slightly backward, as if it were a void in my hand. My skin crawled. I thought about calling it in, reporting a strange malfunctioning sign, but I hesitated, even through the radio static. I felt a presence pressing at the edges of my awareness, a sense that this wasn't a problem anyone else could fix. The signals weren't broken. They were communicating. Something, or someone, was speaking through their rhythm. I followed the path the lights created, stepping cautiously, the gravel crunching underfoot. My eyes darted to every shadow, to every corner of the empty streets. I caught glimpses of movement, quick flashes of the periphery, but each time I turned, nothing was there. My heartbeat raced, and I realized I was gripping my flashlight so hard the plastic was cutting into my fingers. I tried to calm myself, repeating that it was just shadows, just tricks of the light. Then the first whisper came, low, almost beneath the sound of my own breathing, like air being sucked through teeth. I froze, scanning the street. Nothing. My mind jumped to the usual suspects, kids, drunks, vagrants. But this voice wasn't human. It had no warmth, no shape. It didn't even seem to belong in this world. And yet it whispered my name, dragging it out a way that felt deliberate. Officer, come forward. My legs moved before my brain caught up. I walked toward the signals, each step hesitant, every sense screaming at me to turn back. The street stretched farther than it should have, curving and dipping in ways that didn't match the map in my head. The signals blinked faster now, almost urging me forward. My chest felt tight, lungs burning, and still no one else was here. Not a soul, not a car, just the empty street and the signals. I reached a corner, and the signal at the intersection twitched violently, like it had suddenly grown impatient. I froze. For a moment, the night felt fragile, as if it could shatter with the slightest wrong move. Then another whisper, layered over the first, faster this time, frantic. Stop, don't follow. I spun around. The street behind me stretched endlessly, lit by blinking reds that I hadn't noticed before. The path I had walked seemed to vanish. The fog began creeping in, thin at first, curling along the edges of the road, brushing against my boots. It wasn't enough to obscure sight yet, but it carried with it a damp smell, earthy and metallic, like wet leaves decaying. The signals flickered in and out of the mist, teasing me, showing and hiding the path. My pulse spiked. I knew the fog shouldn't be here. Not in the middle of the city streets. Not like this. It felt deliberate, predatory, like a shroud waiting to pull me in. My radio crackled suddenly. I spun, fumbling for it. But the only sound was static, punctuated by that same voice I couldn't place. Louder now. Clearer. Forward. Find. It wasn't yelling. It wasn't pleading. It was commanding. And it resonated with something deep in my chest. Something I couldn't resist. I followed again. The signals led me down a side street. One I hadn't walked in years. The street was narrower, lined with buildings that seemed too close, too tall, their windows dark. The fog thickened, and the signals blinked rapidly, forming a tunnel of red that pulled me forward. The whispers overlapped now, a chorus of urgent voices, unintelligible yet familiar, as if the city itself were calling me, reshaping the night for its own purpose. Then I saw it, movement in the windows, figures tall and shadowed, watching me. I froze, every instinct screaming. But before I could run, the figures vanished, leaving only the blinking signals and the creeping fog. My hands shook, the flashlight beam cutting through the mist, bouncing off invisible walls, reflecting shapes that weren't there a moment ago. A strange calm settled for a heartbeat. The voices subsided, leaving only the fog and the signals. I realized then that the lights were no longer static. They were pulsing, almost breathing, in rhythm with my own heartbeat. I bent closer, trying to understand, try to reason, and in that instant, the red blinked in a pattern I recognized. A slow, deliberate Morse code. My stomach turned over as I deciphered it. You are here. I stumbled back, tripping over loose cobblestone, my breath visible in the cold, metallic air. The signals pulsed faster, seemingly aware of my panic, almost mocking me. I reached for the radio, yelling, trying to call dispatch, trying to bring reality back into this world. But only static answered, and then, faintly, another voice, deeper now, rolling like a fog itself. Stay with us. I ran, without thinking, toward the main road, away from the signals, away from the fog, away from the whispers. The street seemed to stretch endlessly, the signals blinking in pursuit, guiding me, pulling me, bending reality. My chest burned, my legs screamed, but the instinct to escape, pure, raw, drove me forward. When I finally broke through the mist and reached the main avenue, the fog thinned. The signals were gone. The whispers vanished. Only the streetlights hummed weakly above me, the city stretching empty and silent. My hands shook, my chest heaving. I looked around, half expecting the figures to emerge from the shadows, half fearing the signals would blink again, alive, chasing me. But nothing moved, nothing watched, nothing breathed, and yet the sense of being followed lingered, curling inside my ribs, gnawing at the edges of my mind. The radio crackled once more, soft this time, almost tender, whispering a single word I didn't understand. I drove back to the station slowly, the signals gone, but the memory of them burned in my mind. And deep down I knew they weren't done. The streets would remember me, and next time, the signals wouldn't just blink. They would lead me somewhere I couldn't come back from. I was driving slow, headlights cutting to the fog that had crept back over the highway, wrapping everything in gray. Mile after mile, nothing moved except the shimmer of wet asphalt under my tires. Then I saw him, or her, I couldn't tell at first, standing on the shoulder, a lone figure, thumb out. At first, I thought maybe someone had broken down. Night shifts attract all kinds of weird calls, drunks, wanderers, lost travelers. I slowed, keeping a cautious distance, feeling the hairs on my neck prickle. But the figure didn't move like a normal person. They didn't flinch when I approached, didn't wave or signal me to stop. They just stared, perfectly still, and I had the sudden, unshakable feeling. They were expecting me. I killed the lights for a second, just to make sure my eyes weren't playing tricks. When I flicked them back on, the figure hadn't moved an inch. The fog curled around their legs, making them look like they were floating, anchored to the asphalt by nothing. Something about their posture, the way they leaned slightly forward, suggested they knew exactly who I was. My pulse spiked. I rolled the window down. "You need a ride?" My voice sounded loud in the emptiness. They smiled, slow and deliberate, but it wasn't friendly. "You know why I'm here," they said. My blood ran cold. That voice, it sounded like it was inside my head, not through the window, not carried by the wind. I tightened my grip on the wheel. "Who? What are you talking about?" The figure took a step closer, or maybe the fog shifted. I couldn't tell. "The things you've done, the places you've been. I know." I blinked, thinking maybe I was losing it. Night shifts do this. Hours of isolation make your mind play games. But no, the words were too precise, too specific. He or she knew things no one else could. My patrol notes, the old call from last year where I found that abandoned car. All of it. How could a stranger know? My throat tightened. I hesitated. Instinct screamed to drive past, to get away. But something drew me in. Maybe curiosity. Maybe something worse. The figure didn't move, just waited, as if the road itself had planted them there for me. I slowed to a crawl, heart hammering. Why do you know me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. A laugh, soft hollow. "Because I see everything you see. Because I'm always there, even when you think you're alone." I shivered. My eyes darted to the rear-view mirror, half expecting to see someone in the back seat. Nothing. Just empty fog curling around my headlights. I swallowed hard. My mouth felt dry. "You're lying. You can't." The figure's smile widened, just enough to be wrong. Not terrifying, but fundamentally wrong. "I'm not lying. You'll see. Soon." I wanted to move, to drive off, but the figure's presence filled the car before I even shifted gears. I could feel it, not physically, but pressing at my mind, seeping through the edges of thought. My fingers tightened on the wheel, knuckles white. Then they said something that made my blood run ice cold. "The fog isn't hiding you. It's showing you. Everything you think you've hidden, everything you try to forget, it's here." I slammed the brakes without meaning to, heart hammering. The car skidded slightly on the wet asphalt, tires squealing against the mist. When I looked back up, the figure was gone. Just gone. No footprints. No movement. Nothing. My brain refused to process it. I started driving again, faster this time, headlights cutting furrows through the fog. Every shadow seemed to twitch. Every whisper of wind against the car sounded like footsteps. And yet, every time I glanced at the shoulder, I half expected the figure to reappear, waiting patient, knowing. Minutes stretched. My breathing came in shallow bursts. The radio crackled. Static first, then something clearer. A voice, low and familiar, whispering my name. Not a call, not a broadcast. Just my name, carried across channels, across miles of empty road. My stomach knotted. I tried reasoning. It had to be a prank, a coincidence. A late-night driver with a scanner. Someone messing with me, but the clarity, the certainty in that voice, no one else could know. No one else could speak to me like that. And then I saw the signs, flickering traffic lights, half-broken neon on abandoned signs, blinking in patterns that weren't random. The fog seemed to respond to them, swirling tighter, forming tunnels and pockets that bent the street unnaturally. The figure's words echoed in my mind, unbidden. The fog shows what hides. The lights guide what's lost. I gripped the wheel until my knuckles cracked, heart thundering in my ears. The car's headlights caught something moving in the mist, fast, just at the edge of vision, impossible to identify. I slammed the brakes again, thinking the figure had returned, but nothing concrete appeared, only shadows twisting against themselves, shapes that made my eyes ache to focus. A sudden pang of memory hit me. The last time I'd felt this way, paralyzed by something unseen, it had been at a similar intersection, a deserted highway, another lone figure I thought I imagined, and then I remembered. I had written it off as fatigue, as stress. But now, all the forgotten dread came rushing back. And this was worse. I started noticing patterns. The signals, the whispers, the fog, the figure. It wasn't random. Everything was tied to me, my patrols, my decisions, the silent moments I tried to forget. And this figure, it wasn't just aware of me, it was patient, waiting for me to acknowledge it. I turned onto a side road, hoping to escape the main stretch, hoping to find a place where normalcy existed. The fog thickened instantly, pressing in from all sides. The figure reappeared at the edge of the headlights, closer than before, and I realized I hadn't noticed how quickly it moved. Always ahead, always knowing where I was, even before I moved. "Why are you following me?" I whispered, more to myself than to the figure. "You're not following me," it said. Its voice was calm now, almost comforting in a way that twisted my stomach. "I'm showing you." Showing me what? My pulse spiked. I caught glimpses of shapes in the fog, glimpses of places I had walked, doors I had opened, moments I had buried. The figure's presence made it impossible to turn away. It wasn't just out there, on the shoulder, in the fog. It was inside, weaving itself into my memory, my perception, rewriting the night to include itself. A brief, surreal calm washed over me. I thought maybe, just maybe if I stayed calm, I could outmaneuver this presence. But that calm was fleeting. The figure's smile was still there, faint in the mist, and the whisper followed, insistent. "You can't leave what knows you." And that's when I realized something I didn't want to accept. The hitchhiker didn't want to ride. It didn't want conversation. It wanted acknowledgement, recognition. My mind shivered at the thought. This wasn't a person at all. Not in the way we understand people. It was something else. Something that knew me better than I knew myself. I slammed the car into drive, tires squealing, fog whipping around the headlights, and tried to put distance between us. But every turn, every mile, I felt its gaze, its presence, inescapable. The street stretched endlessly. The signals blinked in patterns, guiding me, warning me, daring me to understand. I realized then that it wasn't about escape. It never had been. The hitchhiker, the thing, was part of the road now, part of the fog, part of the signals, part of the night. And it knew exactly how to get inside me, how to make me question every shadow, every whisper, every memory. By the time I reached the familiar stretch leading back to the station, the figure had vanished again, just as suddenly as it appeared. No footprints, no trace, just a lingering sense of being observed, of the night itself bending to some invisible will. My hands shook as I parked, the engine ticking as it cooled. I tried to steady my breathing, to make sense of what had just happened. But I knew, deep down, that the hitchhiker wasn't gone. It was waiting, watching, and the next time I drove into that fog, it would be ready. The fog had settled thick again by the time I passed the last curve, the world reduced to a smear of gray and the hum of my engine. I kept glancing in the rear view mirror, half expecting the figure to reappear, but the shoulder remained empty. I told myself it was gone, that it had never been real, but the air still felt wrong, charged with something I couldn't name. And then I heard it, a whisper, low, almost carried by the wind itself. My name, drawn out slowly, elongated, as though the night itself was speaking to me. I froze, hand hovering over the wheel. There was no one around. No cars, no lights. Nothing but the fog curling around the trees and the distant hum of a telephone line somewhere far off. Yet I felt it like a brush against my mind, subtle but undeniable. "Don't forget," it murmured. I tried to shake it off, telling myself the night shift plays tricks. Fatigue, isolation, the same stretch of road over and over. But the whisper persisted, repeating phrases that seemed pulled from the recesses of memory I'd thought buried. The abandoned house at the bend, the call that came too late, the car in the ditch I'd found years ago. My mind twisted the sounds into half-formed images, almost like they were being projected from somewhere outside me. My knuckles whitened around the wheel. Every instinct screamed to stop, to turn back. But another part of me, irrational, maybe cursed, needed to know, needed to see where this was leading. I pressed on, headlights barely piercing the fog, the road bending endlessly into gray. Then I noticed them, shadows fleeting at the edges of my vision. Figures? Shapes? They flickered with every headlight sweep, just out of focus, moving as though caught between worlds. I blinked hard. My eyes burned. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it wasn't. And then the whispers grew louder, closer, layered. Multiple voices now, overlapping, echoing. Not my name this time, but fragments of sentences. Snatches of conversation I couldn't place. Warnings, laughter, sobs, pleading. Each sound sharpened the tension in my chest until breathing felt like a conscious effort. I realized with a jolt of terror that these weren't echoes of the present. They were fragments of the past, the departed, maybe, or something that collected the echoes of every soul who'd wandered these roads at night. And somehow they were calling me, not to help, not to guide, but to trap, to remind, to make me part of the night. I pressed the radio button, hoping for static, a signal, anything to drown it out. White noise, static hiss, then a voice clear and possibly near whispering, "You can't leave yet." My heart skipped. No other units were on this road. No other cars. No one could be talking. And yet the voice came through, personal, intimate, dissecting me. I slammed my palm on the console, static flaring, then cut the radio. Silence. Brief, fragile, like the calm before a storm. My pulse slowed a fraction. I told myself I was imagining it, my mind stretching the night too far. But even as I tried to convince myself, the whispers returned, this time in tandem with movement. I saw them clearly now. Figures, indistinct, fluid, like smoke given form, dancing just beyond the headlights. I could sense their presence more than see it. Circling the car, brushing against the fog like fingers over fabric. The air grew cold, unnaturally so, and I felt my stomach knot, an almost physical weight pressing on my chest. I wanted to drive faster, escape the hallucination, the phantom, the whispers. But the road stretched endlessly. Each mile seemed longer than the last, the fog thickening, the figures multiplying, the voices growing sharper. My mirrors reflected nothing but gray, yet I could feel the gaze, patient, persistent, following every movement. And then the strangest thing, a flicker of recognition. One shadow paused, just for a moment. It wasn't an image of someone I knew. It was a mirror, my own face, twisted, unfamiliar, staring back at me from fog. My heart froze, not just seeing myself. It felt like it had been taken, shaped, manipulated by something outside the car. Outside me, the whispers coalesced, layering into a single, insistent voice. Remember what you've left behind. Memories I hadn't touched in years flashed. Calls ignored, decisions made too late, mistakes buried under paperwork and distance. The figure from the shoulder, the fog, the shadows, they weren't just out here on the road. They were inside me, inside every choice I'd ever made that had led me here. And they weren't done. I gripped the wheel, knuckles aching, and tried to speak. But my own voice sounded hollow, swallowed by the wind and the murmurs. What do you want from me? No answer, just the twisting shadows. The whispers curling tighter around my mind in the sudden, horrifying realization that the road had changed. The familiar bends and markers were distorted. Trees appeared closer, farther, leaning over the pavement in ways they never should. The fog seemed to pulse with intent, forming tunnels and gaps that led nowhere I recognized. I thought I caught a glimpse of the figure again, standing ahead, impossibly still, yet somehow moving closer the instant I blinked. I slammed on the brakes, heart hammering, tires screaming against slick asphalt. Nothing. Only fog. Only whispers. Only the cold brush of air against my face, like fingertips, tracing, observing. My hands shook as I tried to make sense of it. Was this some trick of the mind? Fatigue? Sleep deprivation? Or had the figure changed the world around me? My own perception? I could no longer tell what was real. The road, the fog, the echoes, they all felt like extensions of the same consciousness. One that was watching, waiting, testing me. A fleeting relief hit when I saw the faint glow of distant streetlights. The first sign of human presence in miles. Maybe the whispers would fade. Maybe the shadows would recede. Maybe I could reach safety. My stomach eased for a moment, hope flaring briefly like a candle. But as I drove closer, I noticed the shadows weren't retreating. They moved toward me, not from the fog, not from the roadside, but from the streetlights themselves. And the voices rose, a chorus now layered, echoing, circling me in the car, pleading, laughing, whispering my name, telling me things only I could know, things I didn't want remembered. I slammed on the brakes again, car skidding slightly on the wet road. The shadows flickered, twisted, then suddenly they were gone. Silence fell like a hammer. My ears rang. My chest heaved. I told myself to breathe, to calm down, to rationalize, to drive on and put this behind me. For a moment, it worked. The fog thinned slightly. The road straightened. I could see the horizon again. The faint glimmer of the station lights miles away. Maybe it was over. Maybe I had outrun it. Then I heard a single whisper, slow, deliberate, drawn from the very air around me. You can never leave. I froze. The road ahead shimmered, the fog curling into shapes I couldn't comprehend. And I realized the truth. It hadn't vanished. It never vanished. It didn't have to. The night, the fog, the whispers, they were all extensions of the figure of the road itself, of the things I couldn't outrun inside myself. I drove the rest of the miles in silence, the whispers now faint but present, threading through the edges of my mind like a ghost tethered to my thoughts. Every shadow, every curve, every flicker of light reminded me that it was still out there, still observing, still waiting. The road had become a mirror, and I could no longer tell where I ended and the night began. By the time I reached the station, the fog had lifted slightly, and the whispers receded into memory, fragile but undeniable. I parked, hands trembling, heartbeat echoing in my ears, and tried to convince myself I was safe. The figure was gone. The shadows had dissolved. The voices had faded. But I knew they hadn't really left. Not entirely. Not ever. Somewhere out there, in the folds of fog and shadow, the hitchhiker waited. And every time I drove the stretch again, I would hear the echoes of the departed, whispering, reminding, waiting for me to acknowledge what I could never unsee. And deep down, I knew the next time I turned onto that road, the whispers would not just follow me, they would be inside me. I was counting the miles by the cracks in the asphalt, the ones that split the road like old scars. The radio was dead silent, and for the first time in years, that felt normal. Nothing had been normal for weeks. Shifts stretched into long nights of empty streets, fog crawling over the road like it had a mind of its own. And then I saw it. At first, it was just a shape, a dark blot against the dim orange of my headlights. A van, or maybe a truck, I couldn't tell. It was parked crooked on the side of the road. Tires half in the gravel, half on the asphalt. No lights, no movement. Just there. I slowed. My pulse ticked a warning I could feel in my throat. My first thought was that someone had broken down. I'd seen that 100 times. But then my gut told me something was wrong. This road wasn't supposed to exist. Maps didn't mark it. GPS couldn't find it. And yet, here I was, staring at a van that shouldn't be here, in a place that shouldn't exist. I stepped out of the cruiser, boots crunching against loose gravel, the sound impossibly loud in the fog. The air smelled wrong, wet metallic, like iron mixed with rot. The van didn't have a license plate. No markings, nothing. Just black metal swallowing the dim light around it. I circled it slowly. The tires were caked with dirt that didn't match the road. Fresh mud, Sticky and deep. Whoever drove this thing hadn't come from anywhere near here. I tapped the driver's side door with my flashlight. The metal was cold. Empty. Nothing inside. Not a single trace of life. I crouched, peering through cracked windows. The seats were worn, threadbare like the van was old, but the interior smelled clean, disinfected. Too clean. My skin prickled. Something about the contrast made my stomach twist. How could something so abandoned look so cared for? I backed away, feeling the tension coil on my shoulders. That's when I noticed it. The rear view mirror, not the one inside the van, the one inside my cruiser. I glanced at it and froze. For a split second, I thought I saw a movement, but the road behind me was empty. Empty. Only the fog, curling like smoke over the cracked asphalt. I told myself it was my eyes playing tricks. Headlights on wet asphalt. Shadows from the trees. That had to be it. But the feeling didn't leave. My chest tightened as though the fog itself was pressing against me. Watching. I stepped closer again, flashlight in hand. The van's door handle was cold under my fingers. I imagined twisting it open. Inside it might be what? A missing person? A trap? My radio crackled. Static, long bursts that cut in and out like someone was breathing on the other side. I shook my head. No! I whispered, nothing's here. Nothing is. Then the fog shifted. I swear it moved like water around the van, coiling into shapes my brain tried and failed to ignore. My ears caught something. The faintest click, like a door locking, but I hadn't moved. My hand hovered over my weapon, though I knew deep down it wouldn't matter. This wasn't about bullets. This was about whatever had slipped into the spaces my eyes couldn't see. I circled the van again, slower this time. There was writing scratched into the metal near the rear wheel. Tiny letters, almost invisible. I crouched, flashlight tracing them. Do not follow. My stomach flipped. Whoever, or whatever, left this message wanted me to leave. But I couldn't. That's the thing about fear. It doesn't always make you run. Sometimes it makes you stare. I stepped back. The van's surface seemed to ripple faintly, like oil on water. My brain rejected it. Heat, cold, the flicker of movement. My hands were shaking, sweat slick on my skin. I glanced at the fog tree lean. Shadows pressed between the trees. I could almost make out shapes. Human shapes. I raised my radio. Dispatch. Any units near, the Old Mill Road? No answer. Just static. I tried the map on my phone. Nothing. Not a single road matching this one. I stared at it like it was a trick screen. How was I here? I hadn't taken a wrong turn. I knew this route, or at least I thought I did. Then I noticed something on the windshield. A note, handwritten, barely legible, taped inside the glass. I leaned in. The words were smeared, as though someone had pressed their fingers against the ink. IT sees you. I stumbled back, heart hammering. My eyes darted to the fog, to the van, to the tree lean. Something was off. The van had a presence, like it breathed. And in that presence, I could feel it measuring me, weighing me. I swallowed, trying to make sense of it. Could it be someone playing a joke? But everything felt wrong. The cold that crept through my coat, the unnatural silence, the way the fog moved like it had awareness. No prank could bend the air around you. I took a step back and realized something worse. The van, it was following me. Or at least, it seemed to shift in my peripheral vision when I moved. Every glance away, every blink, I thought it had advanced. I tried to steady my breathing, telling myself I was imagining it. My mind raced through every possibility, every scenario I'd trained for, but nothing fit, nothing. And then I heard it, a low hum, almost inaudible, vibrating through the soles of my boots. Not an engine, not electricity. Something deeper, something inside the metal. My stomach knotted. My hand trembled over my radio again. No signal, just static. I forced myself to step closer again, curiosity gnawing at fear. The fog swirled around the tires. I could see footprints, but they weren't mine, not mine, leading away from the van toward the tree lean. And yet, when I turned, they stopped. No one, nothing. My instinct screamed to leave. My gut, my training, every fiber of me shouted, but my eyes kept returning to that van. It held a secret, a presence, something that shouldn't exist, and yet, here it was. I circled to the passenger side, flashlight bouncing over dented metal and fog-damp asphalt. The doors were all locked. The rear doors, the side, nothing. And yet, inside I felt eyes, watching, patient, cold patient. I wanted to believe it was a trick of light, fog, the loneliness of a long shift. But deep down I knew that when I left, the van would be gone. Or worse, waiting somewhere I wasn't expecting. I backed toward my cruiser, hand still hovering over the door handle. I glanced again in the rear view mirror. Nothing, but for a heartbeat, I thought I saw a shadow. Someone sitting in the driver's seat, face pressed to the glass, staring at me with impossible calm. Then it vanished. I tried the van again. My shoulder bumped the door, and a sound came from inside. A whisper? A cough? I couldn't tell. Just a certainty that I wasn't alone, not by a long shot. And then I realized the air itself had changed. The fog was thicker now, the silence heavier. I could barely see the tree line. It was like the world had narrowed, funneling toward the van. The presence pressed closer. I could feel it wrapping around my chest, tightening, squeezing. I thought about calling backup, about leaving a note, about anything that would make sense. But my phone said nothing. My radio said nothing. The road was gone from the map, erased, and in the dim orange of my headlights, the van waited. I took a step back, and my boots sank slightly in the gravel, as if the ground itself was reluctant to let me go. The van stayed still, too still, like it had merged with the night, the fog, the air itself. I swallowed hard. The note, the footprints, the whisper of movement inside. Everything pointed to one thing. This van wasn't just abandoned. It wasn't broken down. It was alive in a way I couldn't explain. Waiting, testing, watching. I backed up toward my cruiser, not trusting the van for a second longer. My heart hammered, every nerve screaming, yet curiosity clung to me like a second skin. I needed to know. I had to know. And as I reached my door, I glanced back one last time. The fog had thinned just slightly. I could see the outline of the van, and something about it had shifted. The darkness inside the window seemed deeper, infinite, like a void. And for a brief second, I could swear I saw movement. Tiny, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable. Eyes, watching me, waiting. I climbed in, slammed the door, and started the engine. Headlights cut through the fog again. My hand shook on the wheel. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Nothing. Empty road. No van. No footprints. Just the fog curling over the asphalt. I exhaled slowly, though my chest still felt tight. The van was gone. Or maybe it had never left. Somewhere in the fog, it waited, and I knew I hadn't seen the last of it. The road stretched ahead, cracked and silent. The radio remained dead, and somewhere just out of sight, the van watched. I drove on, but the sense of being followed never left me. I couldn't shake it. Every time I thought I'd left the van behind, the rear view mirror reminded me otherwise. At first, I told myself it was fatigue, the long shift stretching my mind into tricks. But the reflection didn't lie. The road behind me was empty, cracked asphalt fading into fog. Still, there was something shifting just beyond the glass. A shadow darker than the night itself. Not moving, not leaving, just waiting. I tightened my grip on the wheel. Headlights cut swaths through the fog, illuminating splinters of road, twisted tree limbs, and the occasional animal frozen in the orange glow. Each blink of my eyes flicked the shadow, and somehow it seemed closer with every glance. The van shouldn't exist. The road wasn't on any map. And yet, there it lingered in my mirror's edge, defying logic. I checked behind again. Empty. No wheels, no headlights, nothing. My pulse hammered in my ears, loud enough to drown out the hum of the engine. The mist curling over the asphalt was thicker now, curling around the edges of the road like a slow tide, swallowing familiar markers and bending the world into something unrecognizable. And still, in that mirror, something followed. Something unseen, yet undeniably present. I tried to blink it away, tried to convince myself it was a trick of light, reflection, fatigue. But logic had nothing here. Every instinct screamed that I was being watched. I glanced at my rearview mirror again. This time, I saw more than shadow. A faint glimmer of white, like an eye-catching light for a fraction of a second. I jerked my head, rubbed my eyes. Nothing. Empty road. Fog crawling like smoke. But my gut twisted, heavy and raw, as though it had already felt that gaze before I even saw it. I muttered under my breath. Just a trick. Just a reflection. My voice sounded small in the cab, swallowed by the engine's steady thrum and the fog pressing against the windshield. The van had vanished. Or at least, the van I thought I had seen. The road stretched on lifeless, and for a moment I felt relief. My hand relaxed slightly, shoulders easing, but the rear-view mirror told a different story. I couldn't look away. Every time I glanced behind, the same darkness lingered, just beyond clarity. No form, no face, no body, but a presence, thick, waiting, patient. I began to wonder, was it the van or something that had come with it? I tried to focus on the road ahead. My headlights sliced through the fog, revealing twisted branches and the occasional broken sign. But with every glance, that reflection stayed, always in the mirror, always there, waiting, watching. The hum of the engine became unbearable. I killed it, coasted forward slowly, letting the tires whisper against the asphalt. Silence pressing from all sides, heavier than the fog. And then I noticed it, a pattern. The shadow didn't move with the van. It didn't mirror me. It stayed fixed, as though my own movements were irrelevant. I swallowed hard. My pulse spiked. Every instinct screamed to turn around, to drive away, to leave this road, this van, this shadow. But I couldn't. I had to know. What was following me? What had been in that van? I tried the radio. Nothing. Static that buzzed in my ears. But no signal, no voice, no reassurance. Just the silence pressing on all sides. A sudden breeze rattled the cracked windows. Though the air outside was still, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The shadow flickered. Subtle, almost imperceptible, like a ripple across water. My stomach churned. My hand shook. I realized I hadn't blinked in what felt like minutes. Staring at nothing, trying to find something tangible. And then I saw it clearly. Not a face, not a figure, but eyes, small, unblinking, impossibly bright, staring from the depth of that reflection. No van, no form, just eyes, watching, waiting, patient, patient, patient. I jerked my head back to the road. My heartbeat thundered. I tried to convince myself I had imagined it. Fatigue, stress, that had to be it. I glanced again. They were still there. The eyes. Following, tracking, refusing to leave. My breath caught in my chest. I realized they didn't blink. They didn't move. They simply observed. A part of me wanted to speed up, to break free. But another part needed to see, to understand. The fear tangled with curiosity, and not too tight to unravel. I glanced at the empty road behind me. The cracked asphalt disappearing into fog. Nothing. No van. No vehicle. No shadow. Yet in the mirror, the eyes remained. The fog thickened suddenly, coiling around the edges of the road like hands, pressing me into the seat. I felt the weight of it. The pull, like gravity, had shifted. I shivered, realizing I couldn't escape it by moving forward. Then I noticed movement elsewhere. Peripheral, subtle. Trees, swaying till the air was still. Shadows bending in impossible angles. My hands tightened on the wheel, knuckles white. I whispered a warning I wasn't sure anyone, or anything, could hear. The rear view eyes shifted slightly. Not with me, not with the road. But they moved. They followed something else I couldn't see. Something deep in the fog. My skin crawled. I swallowed. Tasted blood in my mouth. I reached the door lock. But the car felt wrong, heavy, resistant. My reflection in the rear view mirror flickered with it. Something was interfering, bending the world in subtle ways I couldn't explain. The silence broke with a sound, a faint scratching metallic coming from behind the seat. I froze, tried to locate it. Nothing. The eyes remained. Always the eyes. I glanced forward. The headlights illuminated a broken sign. End of maintenance. The road ended somewhere beyond, but the fog swallowed it whole. No guardrail, no clear drop, just mist and shadow. I realized I had no idea where I was, how far I'd come, or if I'd even left the place where the van had waited. Panic nibbled at me, but I forced a slow breath. 1, 2, focus. The eyes in the mirror didn't blink, didn't breathe, just watched. I knew, somehow, they knew I was aware of them now, and that awareness seemed to please them. I tried to trick them. Glance away, quickly back. Nothing. Empty mirror. Relief flared, brief and shallow. Then I blinked again. Eyes. Watching. Closer. More certain. I wondered what would happen if I stopped. Parked. Turned off the engine. Let the world catch up to me. Would the eyes vanish? Or would they grow bolder? Hunger, patience, and calculation radiated from them, though I couldn't explain why. The road narrowed. Trees pressed closer. Branches tapped the windshield like fingers counting down. I shivered. My boots itched against the pedals. But I dared not lift my foot. Not yet. I realized I hadn't moved the radio, the GPS, anything. Nothing worked. The fog seemed alive now, curling inwards, masking the distance between me and whatever lurked behind. And the eyes, they didn't just see me, they measured me. Every blink, every breath, every twitch. I tried to shake the feeling, to laugh it off, but my throat was dry, my pulse uneven, fear settled in my stomach, gnawing at the edges of rational thought. And yet, I couldn't look away. The rear view mirror called me, demanded my attention, insisted I acknowledge it. Then I glimpsed movement in the corner of my vision. A figure? No, just a bend in the fog. But the eyes in the mirror tracked it, fixating, unblinking, alive in ways I couldn't understand. My chest tightened, sweat prickling my neck. I told myself to keep driving, keep going, forward, anywhere, but the road had disappeared into the mist. The van, if it had ever been there, was gone. And yet, the rear view eyes were real, and waiting, patient. I clenched my jaw. I had to move. I had to leave. I had to survive. And still, the eyes followed. Somewhere ahead, the fog thinned slightly. The road reappeared, cracked and uneven. I forced my gaze forward, keeping the mirror at the edge of my vision. The eyes were still there, always there, watching, waiting, unblinking. I realized I had no choice. I couldn't ignore them, couldn't turn around, couldn't stop. They weren't just reflections. They were something else entirely. Something patient, something eternal. And as I drove into the thin fog, I knew one thing. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The eyes in the rearview mirror would follow me forever, or at least until I understood why. The road shouldn't have moved. I know that now. I've been driving for what feels like hours, yet nothing looks familiar. The asphalt stretches endlessly, curling and twisting in ways that make my stomach clench. Every landmark I thought I remembered, the cracked guardrail, the broken sign, the bend near the old tree, has shifted, like the world is subtly rearranging itself behind my eyes. I check the rear view mirror again. The eyes are gone, at least for the moment. That small relief is almost unbearable in its intensity. My fingers unclench around the wheel, trembling as if letting go would make the road swallow me faster. But the emptiness behind me is worse, because I know it's still there, patient, waiting. The fog is thicker now, curling along the edges of the pavement, like smoke rising from a fire that isn't there. Headlights illuminate fragments of the world. A broken fence leaning at an impossible angle, a tree trunk split in half, its branches pointing like accusing fingers. I blink. It's gone. Or maybe it's somewhere else now. Somewhere I just passed, or haven't reached yet. I keep driving. I have to. Stopping is an option. But the more I move, the more the road shifts. I take a familiar curve, expecting it to open into a stretch of straight asphalt, but it folds into itself. The lines on the road stretch like elastic, the center stripe curling up into mist, disappearing, then reappearing a few feet ahead. My pulse races. I grip the wheel harder, knuckles white, knuckles cracking under the strain. I whisper to myself, "You're just tired. You're just tired." But the words feel hollow. They echo in the cab, swallowed by the engine's low hum and the oppressive fog. Nothing makes sense anymore. I've been following the same signposts over and over. End of maintenance, cracked pavement, fallen tree. Each one a faint echo of the last. They repeat, rearranged like puzzle pieces I can't solve. A sudden shift in the air makes me flinch. The van, the one that shouldn't exist, appears at the edge of my headlights. Empty, silent, doors closed. But it's closer than it should be. My stomach knots. I slam on the brakes. The tires scream against the asphalt. Headlights flare, illuminating nothing but fog. And then it's gone. Just gone. I tell myself it's impossible. Roads don't vanish. Vehicles don't teleport. I take a deep breath, trying to calm the trembling in my chest. But the road doesn't behave. It bends, twists, folds under my tires like a living thing, reshaping itself faster than I can comprehend. Every turn I take feels like I'm going in circles, chasing a phantom version of a route that might not exist at all. I glance in the mirror. This time, the eyes have returned. Not in the van, not in the reflection of anything real. They're just there, hovering in the dark, glowing faintly, unblinking, impossible. My breath hitches. I slam both hands on the wheel, trying to shake the feeling that I am being watched not from behind, but from within. They aren't just tracking me. They know me. Every movement, every thought, every fear. I press the accelerator. The fog thickens further, swallowing the road ahead like ink. The headlights cut short beams through a wall of gray, illuminating twisted shadows that stretch far too long, bend in wrong angles, and vanish before my brain can process them. I slam the brakes again. My stomach churns. My eyes dart in every direction, desperate for something stable, something familiar. Then I notice the lines on the road. They pulse just slightly. A heartbeat. I squint. They bend toward the center of the cab, almost imperceptibly. My pulse spikes. This isn't just fog or fatigue. The road itself is alive, or at least aware. It's shaping me into something I don't understand, something it can control. I take another turn. A curve I know I've driven at least 3 times already. The same fallen tree appears on the left, but now it's closer. Its branches scraping the side of the patrol car. I yelp and jerk the wheel, swerving slightly. Tires squeal. The branches snap back as if recoiling from the touch, though no wind stirs. I swallow hard. My heartbeat pounds like a drum in my chest. Something moves in the corner of my eye. Not fog, not tree. Something tall, thin, blurred. My headlights catch it for half a second. A shape draped in black, featureless, waiting just beyond reach. I jerk my head. Nothing. Empty road. But the feeling of being watched, measured, hunted, intensifies. I try the radio again. Static. Buzzing. No signal. The world outside the cab is dead silent, as though even sound has been swallowed by the fog. My own breathing is loud, ragged, desperate. I realize I've been holding it for too long. I glance behind me again. The eyes stare back, floating, unblinking. I don't see a van this time, just the eyes, waiting. The corners of my vision tremble with movement, subtle, almost imperceptible. The world itself seems to lean in, edges bending toward the cab, folding like paper. I force myself to focus on the road ahead. The headlights catch a sign. Bridge ahead. Road ends. I squint, try to measure distance, trying to find a break in this loop. But the bridge is wrong. It stretches into the fog, bending upward at impossible angles, lines twisted like sinews. I press the accelerator, but it feels heavier than it should. The car groans under the strain. I'm trapped. The road, the fog, the shifting asphalt, they've swallowed me whole. There is no escape. Every turn, every attempt to find solid ground leads me back to the same twisted path. And all the while, the eyes in the mirror watch. They wait. They know. The world behind me shifts suddenly. A flash of movement. A reflection of myself in the rear view mirror. Except wrong. Too pale. Eyes too wide. Mouth stretched in a way that shouldn't be possible. I jerk my head back toward the road. The reflection lingers, half-formed, flickering at the edges. My stomach twists. I taste bile. I force myself to keep driving. Forward, forward. No other choice. My headlights illuminate a curve, the broken guardrail, now pointing toward me like a claw. I swerve slightly, hugging the center of the road. The tires scrape gravel that wasn't there before. My pulse is a drum, echoing in the cab. The fog parts just enough to show a tree, one I recognize. It's the same split trunk I passed before, branches pointing like fingers. But now I notice something new, a shape carved into the bark, deep, precise, like someone or something has been marking the trees, eyes repeating. Thousands of them etched along the trunk, staring at me. My breath hitches. My hands tighten on the wheel. The eyes in the rearview mirror flare suddenly, brighter, more insistent. My stomach drops. I realize I've been staring at the wrong eyes all along. The road is alive. Yes, but the eyes of the road, watching me, measuring me, waiting for me to falter. I press the accelerator. Tires squeal. The cab lurches. The fog swallows me, swallowing the bridge, the road, the trees. For a moment, I am weightless, suspended between reality and something else. I glance behind. The mirror is empty. Relief, a flash of hope. Then it returns. A single eye, large, unblinking, floating impossibly in the darkness. It pulses slightly, like a heartbeat synced with mine. I realize with a cold certainty, I am part of its hunt now. I am trapped, forever observed, measured, digested into the endless loop of road and fog. I slam on the brakes. Tires skid. The cab jolts violently. The fog swirls around me, curling into the cab itself. I can feel it pressing against my skin, my clothes, invading my senses. I want to scream. I can't. My voice is swallowed. The eye flares again. And suddenly, everything shifts. The road straightens. The bridge seems real, solid. A glimpse of something familiar. Guardrail. Cracks in asphalt. A sign I know I've seen before. Relief floods me, brief and dizzying. My hands shake. My pulse slows slightly. Maybe I've broken the loop. But the rear view mirror, empty. For now, I know it's lying. The eye is still out there waiting. The road is still alive, still twisting, still swallowing. Somewhere ahead, somewhere behind, I am trapped in the loop. And the more I drive, the more certain I become. There is no escape. Not yet. Not ever. Until I understand why the road has claimed me. And I will understand. I have to, because if I stop, even for a second, the road will swallow me completely. The tires screech against asphalt that shouldn't have felt so solid. My hands trembling on the wheel as the fog pressed closer. Every turn I had taken since the van appeared had been a trap. The road folding and twisting around me like it was alive, testing me, stretching hours into eternity. I slammed the brakes. Hard. My chest heaved, lungs burning. The headlights cut through the gray nothing, but the van was gone. Just gone. I sat there, engine idling, and waited for the fog to swallow me again, waited for the eyes to reappear in the rear view. But nothing moved. Nothing blinked. The world had gone still, silent in a way that made my ears ache. I swallowed, tasting metal and fear at the back of my throat. The van had vanished as though it had never existed. Yet the tire marks, deep, fresh, mar the asphalt in a twisting pattern that led nowhere. I stepped out of the patrol car, boots crunching against gravel that seemed to hiss under the weight of each step. Cold air wrapped around me, stiff and unwelcoming. I glanced behind me, following the tire tracks with my eyes. They curved, looped, then disappeared into fog that didn't seem natural, edges too smooth, almost deliberate. It made no sense. Roads didn't behave like this. Vehicles didn't vanish like this. I ran my fingers along the hood, steadying myself. I could hear my own breathing, ragged and loud, echoing off nothing. The van's absence was a kind of presence in itself. An empty weight pressing into the pit of my stomach. I looked up, scanning the road, hoping for a glimpse of headlights, a shape, anything. But there was nothing, just the endless gray swallowing everything familiar, everything safe. The fog shifted slightly, stirred as if by some silent wind. I froze. Then I noticed it. The asphalt beneath the tire marks shimmered subtly, almost like water reflecting the faint light of the patrol car. I bent down, pressing my palm to it. Cold, hard, solid, but the reflection was wrong. The fog twisted in it, bent toward me unnaturally, like the road itself was breathing. I swallowed hard, stepping back, my mind raced, connecting threads that didn't make sense. Every instinct screamed to leave, to drive, to get away. But the road wasn't letting me. It had me now in its hands, and it was patient, calculating, watching. I tried the radio. Static, buzzing, a lone station, faint, but no words came through, just broken snippets of conversation I couldn't understand. I pressed buttons, turned knobs. Nothing, even sound had been swallowed, as though the van's absence had left an emptiness behind that consumed everything. Light, sound, orientation. I glanced down the road. The tire marks twisted at impossible angles, crossing over themselves, then disappearing into fog that seemed too thick to be real. I took a cautious step forward. Gravel crunched underfoot, echoing unnaturally loud. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. Every instinct screamed that I wasn't alone. Something had followed me, something that didn't need wheels to move. I took another step, then another, and finally saw them. Faint impressions beside the tire marks. Footsteps, not human. Too long, too wide, too precise. They led nowhere, yet carried a weight that pressed into my chest. My hand shook, the flashlight I held swaying, casting trembling shadows into the fog. I pointed at the marks, tracing them with my gaze. They weren't random. Someone or something had left them as a message or a warning. A soft crunch behind me made my blood run cold. I spun around, flashlight cutting through fog that seemed to thicken in response. Nothing, just the empty road, still and unyielding. My mind screamed, telling me it was impossible. The world wasn't meant to bend like this. Roads weren't meant to swallow you whole, leaving behind only traces that didn't belong. I forced myself to focus, to think. My eyes traced the road ahead, following the tire tracks that twisted into nothingness. The fog parted slightly, revealing a curve I recognized. The same curve I'd passed hours ago, maybe minutes ago. Time had no meaning here. I felt it pressing against me, like the van's absence wasn't absence at all, but an invisible tether pulling me deeper. The air shifted, cold, thick. I could feel it crawling along my skin, settling into my bones. My fingers itched, my teeth chattered despite the stillness. And then I saw it, a flash of white in the fog, like light reflecting off metal. My chest tightened. I raised my flashlight, heart hammering, and there was nothing. Nothing but the twisting tire marks leading into an emptiness that seemed to watch. I turned in a slow circle, flashlight sweeping the fog. Every shadow moved unnaturally. Every bend in the road seemed closer, tighter, more deliberate. My boots crunched against gravel that no one had disturbed. My eyes caught a shape at the edge of visibility. Tall, thin, featureless. Then it vanished before I could focus. The air around me thickened. Silence pressed against my eardrums. The world had stopped breathing. I stumbled back toward the patrol car. The doors felt heavy, the handles sticky under my fingers. I climbed in, slamming the door shut. Engine on, headlights cutting through the fog, illuminating the twisting asphalt. I exhaled slowly, trying to calm my racing heart. But the tire marks, they were still there, leading me forward into nothing, leading me somewhere I didn't want to go. I started driving, slowly, cautiously, tracing the marks as though following a map I couldn't read. The fog pressed closer, tendrils curling along the hood, wrapping around mirrors, clinging to tires. Every sound, the engine, the tires on gravel, my own breathing, echoed as if in a canyon, swallowed and returned with subtle distortion. The road ahead bent slightly, impossibly, curving into an angle that made my stomach flip. And then I noticed it. Shadows along the edges of the headlights. Not solid, not full shapes. Flickers, movements that didn't belong. I blinked, and they seemed to shift closer, leaning in. The tire marks glimmered faintly in the light, reflecting something that wasn't there. Faces, eyes, fleeting glimpses of a presence. I gripped the wheel tighter, forcing my body to stay still, to stay conscious, to keep driving. A sudden cold gust swept through the cab. Windows fogged instantly, as if the road exhaled. I wiped the glass, but the marks outside shimmered, bending toward me, calling me forward. My reflection in the rearview mirror startled me, eyes wide, pale, unblinking. But the van wasn't there, just a road, stretching into infinity, twisting, swallowing, waiting. I tried to breathe, focus, make sense. Every instinct told me to flee. But where could I go? The marks didn't lead anywhere. They looped, twisted, feeding into the fog. And yet I had to follow them. Something in me whispered that the van, the eyes, the road, they were all connected. That understanding it was my only chance to survive. The headlights revealed another detail I hadn't noticed before. The asphalt itself had tiny cracks, etchings almost like symbols, faint but deliberate. I leaned closer, tried to read them, tracing the lines of my eyes. They weren't random. They formed patterns. Faces. Eyes again. Hundreds, thousands carved into the road. Staring. Watching. Waiting. My pulse surged. I slammed the brakes briefly, my boots pressing hard against the pedals. The cab jolted. Tires squealed. The fog shifted again, swirling faster, curling into spirals that should have been impossible. I blinked, disoriented, and for a moment I thought I saw the van. A silhouette, just on the edge of the fog. Headlights dim, doors closed. I turned toward it. Gone. Just fog and asphalt. And the tire marks. Always the tire marks. Twisting, leading me somewhere into something I didn't yet understand. I exhaled slowly, gripping the wheel. Relief flickered briefly. I'd stopped. I was here. Still alive. Still breathing. But the marks, they didn't end. They led into the fog, into silence, into an emptiness that seemed patient, eternal. And I knew, with a cold certainty, that stopping didn't mean escape. It only meant waiting. Waiting for the van to return. Waiting for the road to claim more. Waiting for the eyes to reappear in the mirror. I ran the patrol car's heater, trying to warm my hands, trying to anchor myself in reality. My reflection stared back, eyes wide, pale, exhausted, but the van wasn't there, only the twisting, mocking tire marks leading nowhere. I traced them with my flashlight one last time, and the road seemed to shimmer, folding subtly, whispering secrets I couldn't hear, promises I didn't want to know. And then I realized something terrifying. The van had left no tracks of its own, no imprint, just the marks leading to nowhere, like it had never been tangible at all. Yet I had seen it, had felt it, heard it, followed it, and now it was gone. And yet I was still here, alone, trapped with the asphalt, with the fog, with the silence. I pressed the accelerator lightly, trying to move forward. The tires hissed against cold asphalt. Every instinct screamed against it. I glanced in the rearview mirror, empty, for now, but I knew better. I knew that the van, the eyes, the road, they were patient, and they waited for me, because the road never forgets. The road never ends. And the van always returns. I turned the dial slowly, letting my fingers hover over the old radio, like it might bite me if I moved too fast. Channel 9 didn't exist, not in any official sense, but I'd heard stories. Static hissed in my ears, a low, white buzz that clawed at the edges of my mind. Then, buried under the interference, I caught it, a voice, faint and urgent, whispering over and over. I couldn't make out the words at first, just a tone, panic, desperation. Something was wrong, and they needed help. I leaned closer, eyes narrowing, scanning the road outside my windshield. Fog pressed against the tree line, curling over the asphalt like it had weight. The patrol car hummed quietly beneath me, engine idling. But the radio's whispers grew louder, more insistent, as though it was aware I was listening. A word floated through clearly for a heartbeat. Stop. I jerked the dial, tried to change the frequency, but it snapped back to the static voice every time, repeating, "Stop, don't go, not yet." My pulse spiked. I knew every law enforcement story, every urban legend, and this wasn't one of those. Channel 9 wasn't a joke. The urgency in that voice wasn't a glitch. It was a warning. My hands tightened on the wheel. I could almost feel someone breathing down the aisle of the car, a cold presence settling behind me. But I told myself it was nerves. It had to be. I pressed the push-to-talk button on the radio. This is Officer. Nothing. Only the static, whispering like 1,000 tiny mouths. I backed the patrol car slightly up the shoulder, trying to get a clearer signal. The trees swayed, almost mocking, branches scraping the roof. Then I heard it again, words that chill me all the way down to my spine. It sees you. The hairs on my arms stood on end. I shook my head, telling myself it was just interference. Old equipment picking up signals from some other town. Someone's CB chatter. But the voice wasn't random. It paused when I paused, rose when I raised the volume. It knew I was listening. My eyes flicked to the rear view mirror, half expecting to see someone or something there. Nothing. Just a long, empty stretch of road behind me. Gray fog swallowing the distance. I twisted the dial again, hard, trying to drown the voice in static. The whispers grew louder instead, overlapping, layering, until I could make out more. Don't follow it, moves fast, the van. My stomach sank. My hand shook. The van. The same one I'd been chasing on the other roads. The one that shouldn't exist. And now the radio, this impossible, non-existent frequency, was telling me I was in danger before I even realized I was moving closer. I tried to focus. Breath in, breath out. The static was maddening, a white noise that pressed on my skull. Then a new phrase cut through, sharp, deliberate. Eyes in the mirror. Always the mirror. I spun around, scanning the glass. Empty. Nothing behind me. No van, no figure, no headlights. Yet the voice insisted. My pulse raced faster than I could count. I grabbed the mic again. Who is this? Identify yourself. Static. And then, you shouldn't be here, it's awake. Awake? I swallowed hard, my throat dry. My eyes darted to the side mirror. Faint fog reflected in the glass. Something moved, or I thought it did. A shimmer at the edge of vision. I blinked. Gone. Just fog. Just the asphalt stretching ahead like a ribbon, leading me somewhere I didn't want to go. The words returned, whispering faster now, layering over each other, the urgency building. Look back. Never alone. It's watching. Stop. Don't go. My hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white. I didn't want to listen, but I couldn't turn it off. Couldn't let go. The patrol car's heater clicked, faintly warm in my hands, but I felt ice crawling through my veins. Something was wrong. Everything about this frequency, this road, this silence was wrong. I reached down, trying to turn the radio off completely. Static roared back louder than ever. My car rattled in sympathy. Then a new sound cut to the feedback. Tires distant, scraping asphalt. I froze, listening. Couldn't tell if it was ahead or behind, moving toward me or away. The radio whispered again. Behind, rear view, don't look. My gut twisted. I stole a glance. The road behind me reflected only fog, only white, empty, and yet the voice insisted it wasn't. I started the engine slowly, carefully, pressing the accelerator just enough to move forward. The static clung to me, growling, whispering fragments of warnings. Not alone, it waits, it sees. I swallowed. I could feel it, some weight pressing from space just beyond the fog, a presence I couldn't measure, couldn't name. The radio wasn't just picking up someone else. It was alive in its own way, watching, guiding, warning. The fog thickened around the patrol car, twisting in the headlights. Shadows seemed to stretch along the trees, leaning in, reaching toward the asphalt. Every turn of the wheel made the whispers pulse faster. I tried to trace them, follow them, find sense in them, but they didn't lead anywhere tangible. Just repetition. Stop. The van mirror, eyes awake. I glanced down at the dashboard. Every gauge normal, every light on, but the road had changed. Curves I hadn't seen, dips I couldn't have remembered. It felt alive, bending subtly to shape my path. And the radio, it seemed to know, guiding me, warning me. But warning me of what? The van? Something worse? I forced my mind to focus. clarity in motion. Follow the road. Don't panic. Yet the whispers persisted. Faster. Sharper. Do not follow. Rear viewed awake, never alone. The words pushed in my skull, pressed against my vision, making me glance again at the mirror. And there, just a flash, something caught the corner of my eye. Not human. Not entirely. Shimmering, almost translucent. Gone before I could confirm it. My pulse hammered, breath ragged. Every instinct screamed to flee, to turn back, to abandon this road. But I couldn't. Not yet. Something about Channel 9, something about the voice. It wasn't just a warning. It was information, clues. And I needed to listen, to understand before whatever was caught me completely. The radio sputtered, then went silent for a long, trembling heartbeat. Relief almost surged, but the faintest whisper lingered, just behind the static, faint enough to chill me to the bone. It's here. I froze, hands on the wheel, eyes scanning the fog, engine idling, radio off, silence pressed in from every direction. And then I noticed the asphalt, tire marks, twisting and overlapping, leading away into fog that didn't belong. I knew them. I had seen them before. The van had been here. And now, the warning made sense in part. It had always been behind me, watching, waiting. The chill on my neck told me the truth I didn't want to admit. Channel 9 wasn't just a frequency. It was a lifeline, a warning system. And whatever had made it, whatever had spoken, knew I was here, knew I was alone, and knew what I couldn't see yet, but would soon. I exhaled slowly, gripping the wheel tighter. My reflection stared back at me in the rear view, pale, wide-eyed, exhausted. Eyes that had seen something, that had listened too long, that understood too much. And then, just as I gathered myself, I felt it again, the faint vibration beneath the tires. Something approaching, something patient. The static returned, not in my ears this time, but inside me, crawling along my nerves. Do not go, do not move, it knows you. And I realized as the fog swallowed the road ahead, that stopping wasn't safety. Listening wasn't safety. Nothing was safety. Channel 9 existed for one reason. To warn those who would follow the van. To warn those who would not survive the silence. And now it had chosen me. I turned the dial again, hesitating this time, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to hear what came next. Static filled the cab, a buzzing white storm, and beneath it, faint murmurs drifted in and out. At first, it was nothing I could recognize. Then I froze. "Hey, it's me." The voice was soft, familiar. My chest tightened. It wasn't possible. I hadn't spoken to her in months. Not since the divorce papers sat on the kitchen counter, cold and final. But there it was, her tone, the hesitant way she always said my name. I leaned closer, gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles burned. "This isn't possible," I muttered, but the voice coaxed me anyway, guiding me, gentle and insistent. Another voice rose through the static, unmistakable. My partner from the precinct, laughing at an inside joke we'd shared during a long, boring shift. The way he said my name made my stomach twist with dread and longing all at once. "You should pull over," the voices whispered, overlapping now, mimicking everyone I'd ever trusted. My pulse raced. My eyes flicked to the fog-draped road ahead, trying to ignore the radio, but my ears wouldn't let go. The road seemed darker, thicker somehow, the fog curling in on itself like smoke from a fire that hadn't been lit yet. Every time I pressed the volume down, the voices surged louder, layering over each other, pleading, teasing. They wanted me off the asphalt, wanted me to follow. My heart hammered as the rational part of me screamed, "Don't move." But the other part, the part desperate for comfort, wanted to believe the familiar tones, wanted to be guided home. I thought I saw headlights flicker ahead in the mist, but when I blinked, nothing remained. Only the tail end of the road, vanishing into shadow. And yet the radio insisted there was someone there, somewhere. "Turn here. You're almost there. The words were my memories. They weren't my loved ones. They were something else, using them to draw me in. I realized that slowly, like watching a shadow lengthen across a wall. My hand shook on the wheel. The cab felt suddenly colder, every metal surface biting my fingers. The whispers escalated, now almost synchronous, layered in perfect imitation. My mother, telling me to stop worrying. My partner, warning me about unseen hazards. My ex, urging me to just pull off the road and rest. My pulse pounded louder than the engine. I couldn't trust any of it. And yet, I was moving closer to the fog, closer to where the voices told me to go. I glanced in the rear-view mirror. Empty. Nothing. No van, no headlights, no figures. Just a long ribbon of asphalt curling behind me. And still, the voices pressed. It's waiting, it's safe, it's sucky. Something in the rhythm of their speech, too perfect, too controlled, made my stomach churn. They weren't real. They weren't me. But my mind wanted to believe them. I tapped the radio, tried to override the channel, switched to a standard patrol frequency. The static fought back, a low growl in my ears, and then subtly underneath it, the familiar voices returned, closer, coaxing. They weren't in unison anymore. They teased me, testing my reactions. Turn now, it's waiting for you. Come closer, my breath caught. I wanted to scream at the dial, rip it from the dash. But I couldn't stop listening. The fog ahead thickened. Shapes, or maybe shadows, darted at the edges of my headlights. I tried to blink them away, told myself it was just mist, just tricks of the lowlight. But I knew better. Something was there, something that understood me. The voices on the radio weren't warnings. They were lures. My pulse hammered, a drumbeat of terror and fascination. I gripped the wheel tighter. Every mile I drove felt both shorter and longer at once. The asphalt seemed to stretch beneath me, twisting and folding, and the voices adapted, blending, whispering my own fears. You'll never get home. You'll never see them again. Come to us. I couldn't stop. My hands itched to obey, to find the safety promised in those warped, familiar tones. Then a sudden shift. Voices halted, leaving only static. Silence pressed in from every direction. My own breathing sounded loud in the car. I blinked, scanning the fog ahead. Faintly, I saw it. Tire tracks cutting through the mist, leading away from the road into nothingness. The radio crackled one final time. We're waiting. The weight of it settled in my chest. I wanted to flee, to slam the patrol car into reverse and scream at the night, but my legs wouldn't obey. My eyes stayed fixed on the tracks, winding away into darkness, and I realized following the voices wouldn't bring safety. It would bring me closer to whatever was out there, the thing that had been whispering through Channel 9 all along. I swallowed hard, trying to regain control, try to convince myself I could just drive past, ignore the call, but deep down I knew the static wasn't done. The voices weren't done. They would always be there, waiting in the dead air between frequencies, coaxing, mocking, luring anyone who dared listen too long. And the road would always answer, bending, twisting, swallowing anyone who followed the signals into the dark. I exhaled, hands trembling, as the fog thickened around the patrol car. My reflection stared back at me in the rearview mirror, pale, hollow-eyed, haunted by the voices. I couldn't turn off the radio, couldn't turn away from the road. Channel 9 had chosen me, and now I had to decide if I would obey or if I would find a way to survive its call. I twisted the radio knob again and again until every other frequency spat nothing but static. Dispatch should have been there. They should have answered, even if it was just a crackle or familiar voice. But the channel was empty, swallowed by silence. My fingers hovered over the mic, tense, and my own breathing sounded too loud in the cab. Dispatch? Come in. I said, voice flat, brittle, echoing back at me from the dashboard. Only static answered. Then, almost beneath it, a faint murmur, like someone whispering through a faraway tunnel. I leaned closer, heart hammering. It sounded like someone I knew, or someone pretending to. Are you okay? The voice was soft, uncertain. I froze. That cadence, that pitch. It was my partner, the one who used to ride with me through the endless night patrols. But the words, they weren't coming from him. The static warped it, twisting the familiar tone into something alien. My stomach turned cold. I tried switching channels, tapping the microphone, muttering numbers, emergency codes, anything to summon a human voice. Nothing. Silence, except for the distorted whispers threading through the static, teasing, coaxing, imitating anyone I'd ever trusted. My heart was a drum in my chest, each beat louder than the last, echoing over the sound of the engine. The road outside had grown too quiet, the fog thick enough to drown out the headlights beyond 50 feet. I felt alone, but not alone. The voices slithered around me, curling in the cab, brushing my ears with soft familiarity. My hands gripped the wheel, like it was the last thing keeping me tethered to reality. "This isn't real," I whispered. "The voice," him laughed softly through the radio, bending my words back at me. I glanced in the rear-view mirror. Nothing. No headlights, no moving shapes. Only the empty reflection of myself, pale and tense, eyes darting from fog to radio, fog to dashboard. The whispers pressed, overlapping now, multiple tones blending into one unnerving hum. "You're almost here. Just keep going, don't stop." A shiver crawled up my spine as I realized the voices weren't just mimicking. They were learning me, probing me, responding to my fears, my hesitation. Every time I thought I could ignore them, they shifted, teasing another vulnerability. My chest tightened with the need to pull over, but my mind screamed that stopping would be worse. Something was waiting, and it wasn't human. The fog thickened, pressing against the cab like wet cloth. Shadows moved at the edges of the headlights, then vanished when I blinked. The static hummed, rising and falling like it had a pulse. I realized my own pulse matched it, speeding in time with the warped whispers. The road ahead wasn't stretching. It was bending around me, folding in ways that made the distance grow even as I drove. I tried calling dispatch again. "Dispatch, come in." My voice cracked. Nothing. Silence. And then the static shifted, forming words, forming voices that shouldn't exist. My mother, my partner, the barista I used to see every morning, all coaxing me, pleading, mocking. My stomach churned. My mind fought to label it, rationalize it, but every attempt felt like smoke slipping through my fingers. The van from the last night, or maybe just my imagination, had been gone for hours, yet the whispers sometimes hinted at it, describing its movements, its engine hum, even though I hadn't seen it for miles. I realized the voices were keeping track, waiting for me to slip, to acknowledge their presence, to believe. The fear wasn't being caught. It was a losing control of letting them guide me. I tried to focus on the road, scanning for familiar markers, mileposts, anything that anchored reality. The fog turned the world into a soft, gray blur, and the asphalt seemed endless. The whispers shifted again, now blending with the sound of the wind. "You can't stop," one said. "You're almost there," another hissed. The words didn't come from the radio. They came from everywhere and nowhere, brushing against my skin like icy fingers. My hands shook, knuckles white. Every instinct screamed to turn off the radio, to pull over, to drive until the voices disappeared. But the road had changed. It twisted too smoothly, too predictably, folding into itself. My headlights caught shapes that weren't there a second ago. My peripheral vision betrayed me, and the voices, they thrived in that betrayal in my panic. I tried to recall training, rules, logic, stay calm, observe, report, but the static burrowed into my thoughts, fragmenting my reasoning. It whispered things I wanted to believe, that help was just around the corner, that stopping would mean losing everything. My foot pressed harder on the pedal, chasing a promise I knew was false. I glanced again at the rear-view mirror. Still nothing, but I could feel eyes, millions of them or none, watching from the fog. Shapes flickered just beyond recognition, teasing, almost human, almost familiar, and the whispers coaxed, shifting tones, weaving together memories and fears, pressing me forward, daring me to stop. A sudden clarity struck. The silence from dispatch wasn't an accident. They weren't silent. They were part of the pattern. Everything, the van, the fog, the voices, was orchestrated to isolate me, to leave me dependent on the whispers that mimicked everyone I'd ever known. Panic rose like bile. I wanted to scream, to slam my fist on the dashboard, but the sound would be swallowed by the fog before it reached anyone. The road ahead stretched unnaturally, the lines folding like they had a mind of their own. The fog made the world shapeless, but the whispers navigated me, guiding me through unseen curves, unseen hazards. I felt both in control and entirely powerless. Each mile blurred into the next, each static laced command embedding deeper into my thoughts. I remember what my partner used to say: keep your eyes forward, trust your training, don't let the shadows speak. But I wasn't sure which shadows were real anymore. The voices were no longer whispers. They were conversation, debate, coaxing, scolding, all interlaced with static. My head throbbed. I wanted to shut all out, but my hands gripped the wheel, and my body obeyed the road even as my mind screamed to stop. And then, abruptly, the voices stilled, leaving only a low, humming static. My ears rang with the absence. The fog thickened into solid gray, the headlights powerless against it. I slowed slightly, peering ahead. Nothing but the road, blank and featureless. No dispatch, no van, just me and the endless stretch of asphalt that seemed to go on forever. The next sign promised a town just over the next hill. Creekside, 1 mile. I pressed on, headlights cutting through the mist, and yet the town did not appear. Only a curve that lengthened as I approached, folding the asphalt like a river in reverse. Panic clawed at me, sharp and cold. The road had stopped being a road. It had become a question, a challenge, a warning. I tried to focus on the cab, on the hum of the engine, on the feel of the wheel beneath my hands. But the fog pressed in from every angle. The lines on the asphalt twisted under headlights, and every sign I passed lay about distances, town's reality itself. The road was no longer a path. It was a test. And somewhere, deep in the fog, beyond the curve that should have ended in Creekside, I knew the road waited for me to falter, to question, to surrender. I gripped the wheel, knuckles white, heart racing, staring into the impossible stretch of asphalt. The sign swung lazily in the mist, lying, shifting, guiding me forward. I didn't know what awaited around the next bend. I didn't know if I would find Milltown, Creekside, or anything real at all. And I didn't know if the road would ever stop lying. But I kept driving. I felt it first in the corner of my eye, a movement that didn't belong. A dark smear against the fog, fleeting, gone before I could focus. I blinked hard, tried to tell myself it was nothing, just a trick of the headlights bouncing off the mist. But the shapes kept coming, drifting along the edges of my vision, curling just beyond recognition. When I looked straight at them, they vanished, always vanished. The road stretched ahead like a black ribbon, glistening wet from some earlier rain, though I couldn't feel any moisture in the air. The fog pressing closer now, thicker, as if it wanted to push me off the pavement entirely. I tried to follow the shapes with my peripheral vision again. A shadow passed between 2 trees, too deliberate to be a trick of light. My pulse jumped. I forced my eyes forward, refusing to glance aside, telling myself it didn't exist. The patrol car hummed under me, tires humming a monotone on slick asphalt. But the shapes seemed aware, as if the road itself had eyes and was moving them along. I swallowed hard, taste metallic in my mouth. I wanted to reach out, to grab whatever was there, but my hands froze on the wheel. Another shadow flickered, longer this time, stretching across the lane just out of reach of my headlights. I jerked my gaze to it. Nothing, only asphalt, fog, and the slight shimmer of distant trees. My heartbeat pounded so loud I thought it might echo back from the mist. I told myself to calm down. It was fatigue, the shift, the darkness playing tricks. But deep down, I knew this wasn't ordinary tired eyes. Every mile marker seemed wrong tonight, numbers twisting, signs that should have read familiar towns read instead as gibberish letters, like the road had started speaking in some language I couldn't understand. And these shadows, they moved independently of the road, of me. They skirted the fog, appearing and disappearing without rhythm, without reason. I tried humming, anything to remind myself I was alive, human, in control. But the shadows stretched longer now, merging with the mist, filling the roadside like ink spilling slowly from an unseen pen. I couldn't tell where the asphalt ended and the shapes began. I slowed the car, unsure if slowing would help, unsure if movement even mattered. A faint sound brushed the edge of hearing. Soft footsteps, rustling leaves, a whisper I couldn't place. I turned sharply, expecting to see a figure, a person, anything human, and again, the corner of my eye caught movement. A tall shadow detached itself from the trees, blacker than the night, leaning like it was studying me. I blinked and it was gone. I tried talking to myself, words sounding hollow in the cab. It's nothing. It's fog. It's shadows. It's fatigue. But even as I said it, I felt the shape shift closer, though every time I turned, the lane ahead seemed empty, the fog undisturbed. It was almost imperceptible, but I could sense its intent, like it was testing me, learning how far I would let fear push me. Headlights swept over the shoulder of the road. A figure? I jerked the wheel, scanning. Nothing but mist and tree trunks leaning oddly. My hands gripped the wheel tighter. The shapes weren't confined to the trees anymore. They slithered along the asphalt edge, vanishing and reappearing as if they were made of smoke and shadow, and I couldn't escape the sensation that they were waiting, patient, knowing I was trapped between headlights and darkness. The radio hummed low, static filling the cab. I wanted to call dispatch, tell someone anything, but the voices never came through. Only static, only a low whisper that made my skin crawl, as if even the signals were afraid of the shapes. And then a flicker, something metallic glinting. I swerved instinctively. A discarded signpost leaned at the edge of the lane, jagged and wet, reflecting the beam of the headlights. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady myself. For a moment, I thought I'd caught a glimpse of human form, slender, upright. But the second I focused, it dissolved into nothing, a memory that hadn't existed. The fog thickened around the car, muffling sound, distorting the lights, swallowing the familiar road markers. Every sense screamed that the shadows were no longer bound by peripheral vision. They were near, closer than I wanted to admit. I tried to reason. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe eyes straining in darkness. But then a movement, directly on the road this time, a fleeting smear at the edge of the headlights. Reflexively, I braked, heart hammering. Nothing solid remained, only the wet asphalt, slick and gleaming, stretching ahead into nothingness. The shapes were patient. They didn't chase. They waited. And waiting was worse than any direct threat. I glanced at the rear view. Dark shapes pressed at the edges of the glass, bending around the reflection, dissolving when I looked straight at them. The car felt too small, the cab too exposed. Every instinct screamed to get out, to leave, but the road had no turns, no exits, no promise of safety. Only the endless stretch, only the fog, only the silent witnesses I couldn't confront. Another shadow passed, brushing the fog like a hand across glass. I blinked and it vanished. I wanted to laugh, wanted to call it a trick of the mind, but my voice caught in my throat. I had felt its attention, the weight of its observation, as though it had studied my fear and was cataloging it. The shapes weren't random. They were deliberate, calculated. Waiting for the moment, I faltered. I sped up. Headlights carved a path through the mist. But the shapes kept pace, always at periphery, always just out of reach. Each curve of the road revealed another, more solid, more defined. The trees themselves seemed to lean, bending toward the lane as if to guide the shadows, to make me see them, to make me notice the impossible geometry of what was surrounding me. A sense of vertigo rose. The asphalt stretched unnaturally, edges curling like black ribbons into fog. The shapes flickered, elongated, splitting into multiple shadows that danced just outside the beam. I felt trapped, as if the car were inside a diorama, moving but never escaping. The fog hissed along the edges, whispers brushing my ears, mocking my attempt to control. I forced myself to breathe, forcing eyes forward, forcing the wheel straight. Yet the road seemed aware, bending subtly to keep the shadows at the corners of my vision, feeding them, allowing them to play. I realized with a creeping certainty that the shapes were not bound by physics, not bound by reality as I understood it. They existed in the space between perception and comprehension, just beyond acknowledgement. A sudden shift, the fog thinned briefly, revealing a single road sign. Rest area, 0.5 miles. I blinked. The shadows condensed, all peripheral motion converging toward the same vanishing point. I pressed on, heart pounding, every instinct screaming that stopping might be worse than continuing. As I neared the sign, the shapes recoiled, dissolving into mist, leaving the asphalt empty but trembling, as if holding its breath. I exhaled, hands trembling on the wheel, mind racing. The road was clear, for now, but I knew it wouldn't stay that way. The shadows had retreated, not gone. They were patient, biding time, waiting for another moment, another crack in focus, another chance to reappear and remind me that the world I thought I knew was already gone. And somewhere ahead, in a fog that refused to lift, I knew the next curve would bring more impossible angles, more shapes that didn't exist, more questions with no answers. I drove on, headlights cutting through mist, every nerve straining, knowing that the shadows would be waiting again, just out of reach, just out of comprehension. The headlights hit it first, a faint curve in the asphalt I hadn't noticed before. At first, I thought it was a trick of shadows, a bend I'd missed. But as I drew closer, the line of the road split cleanly from the highway, a ribbon of black leading into nothing. No sign, no marker, not on the GPS, not on any map I'd memorized. Just asphalt cutting into the fog, beckoning. I slowed, instinct screaming at me to stay on the main road. But something pulled at the edge of my attention, like a whisper I couldn't place. The fog clung to this new lane more tightly than anywhere else, curling around the edges like fingers. I glanced at the rear-view mirror. Headlights behind me reflected empty road. No traffic, no movement, just silence. The air felt thicker here, heavy and wet against my skin. Tires hummed on the asphalt, echoing softly against the fog. I tried to rationalize. Maybe it was a service exit, long abandoned. Maybe someone had paved a shortcut. But my gut twisted. Nothing about this felt ordinary. The road seemed alive, coiling beneath me, waiting for something. I hesitated, one hand on the wheel, the other hovering near the radio. No signal, static whispered in my ears. But I couldn't make out words. My pulse thudded, trying to mask the thrill creeping into my chest. The kind you feel before crossing a threshold you know you shouldn't. Every instinct told me to ignore it. Yet every thought dangled a question. What lies at the end? I took the exit. The car veered smoothly onto the unmarked path. Headlights carving a tunnel into dense fog. The highway disappeared behind me as though it had never existed. Trees leaned closer, branches brushing the roof like a slow warning. I could feel the weight of the mist pressing against the windshield. A smell rose, earthy and metallic, sharp as if the land itself exhaled when I crossed this boundary. Shadows pooled along the edges of the road, darker than the night, unshaped yet deliberate. I kept my eyes forward, heart hammering. Every so often, a faint glint, reflective glass, a piece of metal, something I couldn't identify, flashed just beyond the light. I jerked the wheel slightly, startled by my own reaction. The path ahead had no lines, no markers, only an endless stretch of dark asphalt disappearing in the fog that swallowed everything else. I thought I saw a sign ahead, leaning crooked, half buried in fog. I squinted. Words faded as I approached, letters dissolving into nothing. I blinked. Gone. Was it ever there? My mind wavered between logic and suspicion. Maybe my eyes were tricking me. Maybe the fog was playing games, shifting reality around the car, around me, forcing me to see shapes and signs that didn't exist. Branches scraped the roof, low-hanging and wet, snapping in the wind, or maybe under some weight I couldn't see. I pressed the accelerator lightly, trying to shake the feeling that I wasn't alone, but the road had already wrapped around me, constricting, each curve whispering that I had no escape. Every instinct screamed that I was being drawn deeper, and yet curiosity clenched at my chest harder than fear. I couldn't stop. Then the asphalt changed. Slick patches appeared in irregular patterns, blacker than the rest, glistening like oil. I slowed again, tires sliding slightly over the unseen wet spots. Each step forward made the road grow stranger, unnatural. The fog thinned and thickened with a pulse, like breathing synchronized to my own. I realized I wasn't just following a road. I was following something that wanted me here, wanted me to continue. I tried to focus, tried to analyze, but my mind kept snagging on shapes at the corners of the headlights. Shadows that didn't belong, stretching longer than they should, bending against physics, folding into fog, and then straightening again. I blinked, forced my gaze forward. But every time I tried to dismiss them, the shadows edged closer to my perception, probing. I saw a faint light ahead, not a lamp, not headlights, just a glow, dim amber, diffused through mist. My chest tightened. What was waiting there? I couldn't tell if it was a reflection of something solid or another trick, something conjured by the fog itself. Yet, I felt its pull stronger than the fear gripping me. It whispered possibilities my mind couldn't name, a promise of answers or revelation. The tires hummed on asphalt that seemed to stretch unnaturally, each revolution dragging me closer to the glow. The trees leaned tighter, shadows pulling into impossible angles, like fingers tracing the curve of the road. I realized with a sinking certainty that turning back might not be an option. The highway was gone. The fog behind me pressed flat. No glimpse of familiar lanes. No reassurance. Only this path, this unmarked exit beckoning forward. I caught movement in the periphery, blurred, angular. A figure? I jerked my gaze. Nothing. Just fog curling around invisible edges. My pulse spiked, mouth dry. I swallowed and pressed on, feeling an unspoken agreement between myself and the road. Go forward or be swallowed. A branch scraped the side mirror, sharp, startling. I leaned toward the wheel, eyes wide. The fog parted slightly, and the glow ahead solidified into something resembling a small clearing, or maybe a distortion, a false memory of space. Shapes twisted at the edge of vision, some familiar, like the faint outline of a hand or a leaning body. But none of them held focus. I blinked again and they dissolved. I slowed further, hoping to read the terrain, map something, but the fog refused. Every glance was met with absence. Every focus was vanishing. The road ended abruptly at what appeared to be a slight incline. I couldn't see beyond. The glow hovered over the crest, distant yet close, promising, menacing. My fingers tightened on the wheel. Fear and curiosity wrestled violently inside me. Something shifted in the fog. Something solid? A form? I tried to tell myself it was a tree, a rock, anything. But I sensed intention in the movement, a deliberate unfolding, like the environment itself was aware I was here, testing me. I exhaled, trying to steady the racing pulse, telling myself, one step at a time. The incline rose. The glow grew stronger, warmer. The road curved subtly again, almost inviting, almost welcoming, and I realized the fog had opened just enough to let me see forward. Not fully, but enough to suggest a destination. And that was the worst part. The unknown didn't terrify me. The invitation did. I felt drawn, as if some invisible thread had tied itself to my chest, urging me onward. The incline became steeper, the glow shifting slightly to the left, guiding me like a lantern in the fog. I tried to imagine turning back, retracing my path, but the mist behind me had closed, thick and impenetrable, erasing the highway, erasing the signs. There was no retreat, only this road, only the unmarked exit, only the pull towards something I couldn't name. Tires hummed over wet asphalt as I crested the incline. The glow was brighter now, golden and hazy, and the fog seemed thinner ahead, allowing a glimpse of the road's end, though what lay beyond, I couldn't tell. Shadows pulled at the edges of vision, larger now, forming angles that couldn't exist, reaching without touching. I realized with a jolt, the road wasn't just guiding me, it was watching. I exhaled slowly, hands trembling, heart hammering. I had made it this far. The glow promised something, answers, revelation, or perhaps another question worse than any before. The shadows receded slightly, giving space, and yet I could feel them, waiting for the next misstep. The unmarked exit had delivered me here, but what waited beyond the crest, what would meet me, remained a secret, wrapped in fog and shadow. And as I drove toward it, I understood one truth with unsettling clarity. The road wasn't random, and neither was I. The exit had chosen me, and whatever lay ahead had been waiting a long time. The fog didn't lift when I crossed the county line. It thickened, coiling around the car like smoke from a fire I couldn't see. Headlights cut through in short, uneven bursts, illuminating only glimpses of what lay ahead. Bent trees, dark water puddles reflecting nothing, and road signs that looked decades old, worn beyond recognition. One flickered in the light, county line. I checked the GPS. Nothing. Just a blank road. Gray and endless. That should have been enough to unnerve me. But it wasn't the emptiness that pressed in. It was the sense that I wasn't alone. The air smelled metallic, sharp, like blood mixed with rain, though no rain had fallen. My pulse quickened, not from fear yet, but from a sudden, sinking recognition. I had been here before. Or maybe I had seen it before, somewhere in some memory I couldn't trust. The radio crackled. Static at first. The usual hiss I'd learned to tolerate on old frequencies. Then soft, almost conversational. A voice. My own voice, clipped and professional. Unit 43, status check. My fingers tightened on the wheel. I hadn't called in. Not yet. The voice repeated. Same tone. Same cadence. I fumbled for the mic. Unit 43, this is Officer Hall. I said, voice unsteady. Silence answered. Just static. But beneath it, the same voice, me, responding to dispatch I couldn't hear. My reflection in the rear view caught me blinking. Was that my face? Or the same face, a few years older or younger? Looking back with calm, deliberate eyes, I shook it off. Paranoia, just tired nerves, fog, monotony. I told myself that. But then I saw it. A patrol log lying on the passenger seat. Not mine. An old one, dusty, yellowed at the edges. I picked it up. My stomach dropped. The entry was dated 10 years ago. Unit 43. Officer Hall. Dead. I stared at the page. Every detail matched my current patrol. The route, the shift, the notes about empty roads, about fog, about shadows at the edge of vision. My own handwriting, or something identical, scribbled in the margins. Notes about shapes moving, lights ahead, feelings of being watched. Everything I was experiencing right now, recorded by me, or me that had already crossed this line years ago. And the final entry, do not leave the county line. They are waiting. The words burned into my mind. I dropped the log onto the seat, hand shaking, trying to rationalize. Time, memory, the fog, it had to be coincidence. But as I glanced out the windshield, the road behind me seemed to vanish. Not just the county line, but the highway, the world I knew. Only the stretch of asphalt remained gray, stretching endlessly, suffused with fog in an almost sentient silence. I gripped the wheel tighter, tried to force myself forward, heart hammering. Static whispered in my ears again. This time, fragments of voices, familiar and familiar, like calling my name, commenting on my drive, my choices, my hesitation. The edges of my vision flickered with movement, shadows impossibly dark, leaning just out of focus. I blinked. They didn't move. Or maybe they did, just enough to make me doubt my eyes. I tried the radio again. Dispatch, Unit 43. Do you copy? The mic squawked. A brief burst of clarity, then silence. And then my voice again, calm, professional, cut into the static. Unit 43, do not proceed. Turn back. I froze. My voice, my words, coming from nowhere. My mind scrambled, trying to reconcile what I was hearing with what I knew, what I felt. There was no one in the car, no one on the road, only the fog, the asphalt, the county line stretching like a trap. The car creaked, tires shifting over uneven asphalt. I realized I hadn't been driving straight. The line had curved subtly, guiding me, like a hand invisible but firm. Ahead, something moved, just a flicker in the corner of my vision. Shadows leaned, conformed to angles that made no sense. I caught a glimpse of a figure, or maybe it was me, standing beside the road, facing the opposite direction, pale and still. I blinked. Gone. My pulse roared. The radio hissed, whispered my name again, coaxing, warning. I tried to turn around. The wheel refused, stiff. The car stayed obedient to a road that didn't exist, that led somewhere unknown. The shadow of myself, or a version of me that had died years ago, loomed ahead in my memory, my peripheral vision. Impossible yet undeniable. I thought of the patrol log again. Dead. Yet here I was, alive, moving toward the same unknown, following the same line. Had I been this me before? Had I been recorded, trapped in some loop of time, memory, and fog? Each question was sharper than the last, each realization heavier than any patrol shift I'd survived. The trees thinned, revealing a stretch of asphalt slick with rain, or something with that reflected nothing. The fog parted enough to show shapes, twisted and familiar, forming along the roadside. Old patrol signs I didn't remember, a mailbox leaning at an impossible angle, shadows pooling like water. The county line had become a corridor, a funnel guiding me towards some destination I didn't want to know. And yet, I couldn't stop. The pull was stronger than fear. The log, the voices, the shadow. I was moving toward them, toward an unknown that had already touched me through memory, through time, through the fog itself. The radio hissed one final time. Unit 43, do not cross. They are waiting. My heart thumped against my ribs as I pressed forward. The air thickened, almost physical, pressing in from all sides. Shapes shifted, dark and leaning, a slow, deliberate dance in the periphery. My reflection shimmered faintly in the windshield, another me staring back, mouth open, silent. I gripped the wheel, knuckles white, trying to maintain control. Ahead, a light glowed faintly, diffused in fog. Not a vehicle, not a street lamp. Something else, something that waited. I realized the county line had never been a boundary of law or land. It was a line of inevitability. Cross it, and the past reaches for you. The dead speak in your voice. The shadows guide you. And you, alive or not, follow. I exhaled, slow, deliberate, feeling the weight of inevitability settle over me. The patrol log lay forgotten at my side. Static whispered around me, and the road stretched ahead like a finger pointing, beckoning. There was no turning back, only forward. And at the edge of the fog, at the crest of fear and reality, I glimpsed the faintest shape of what had waited for me all along. I swallowed hard. The county line had chosen me. And now, it was time to see what lay beyond. I heard the first call before the radio even buzzed. A faint whisper through the static. A name I recognized. My name. Hall. My pulse jumped. I checked the radio. Nothing. Just the hiss of white noise filling the cab. I told myself it was fatigue. Nerves after a long day. The hours blending into a dull, endless loop. But the unease stayed lodged behind my ribs, thumping with every heartbeat. The call finally came over the scanner. A routine check. A traffic report near the old mill. Nothing unusual. I muttered the unit number, flipped on the siren lights, and started toward it. The streetlights flickered as I drove, slicing the darkness into thin, trembling beams. I glanced at the map. Same route I took every night. But something felt off. Every turn I approached, the call spoke again, precisely at that moment, naming the street, my movement, my estimated time of arrival. I laughed at myself. Ridiculous. Technology must be lagging. Maybe a prank from dispatch. My fingers tightened on the wheel, and then I noticed it. The shadows along the roadside were thicker, darker, unnaturally still. Trees bent toward the road, as if leaning in to watch. The air smelled wet, earthy, metallic, like a river after storm. The fog had started creeping low, curling along the asphalt, licking the tires with damp fingers. The radio hissed. Unit 43, you're approaching now. My heart skipped. I hadn't called in yet. The voice was calm, authoritative, yet familiar, almost like my own. I swallowed. Dispatch, this is Unit 43 en route. I said. Silence, and the static, then that same voice whispering, almost playful. Don't hurry, Hall. They're waiting. I glanced at the rearview mirror. Nothing but fog. Nothing but the dull glow of streetlights struggling through the mist. Still, the feeling of being watched pressed against me. Something about the words, their rhythm, the way they knew me, made my skin crawl. I shook my head. It had to be a coincidence. A prank. Nerves. But the road seemed to stretch longer, each block dragging on, turning corners I didn't recognize. Ahead, the radio buzzed again. Turn left at the mill. Hall, you're almost there. My hands shook. That was my next move. I hadn't said anything. I hadn't planned this. My headlights caught a figure at the edge of the fog, hunched, standing completely still. I blinked. Gone. Just a trick of the light, I told myself, but the sense of being herded, guided by something unseen, gnawed at my chest. The mill appeared out of nowhere, its rusted skeleton looming through the fog. The call named it precisely, as if it had been watching me the whole way. I slowed, scanning the perimeter. Nothing. Doors locked, windows dark. And yet, every instinct screamed that I was not alone. I felt a shift, subtle at first. The air colder, heavier, pressing in from the edges of cab. My reflection in the windshield seemed sharper, a little too alert, a little too tense. The scanner crackled. Static. Then a fragment of conversation. My own voice, calling coordinates I hadn't reported, noting details I hadn't observed yet. I slammed the brake pedal. The tires hissed over wet asphalt. The voice repeated a soft, deliberate mimicry. "You're closer than you think, Hall." I leaned forward, straining, tried to see through the mist. Shadows flickered at the corner of my vision, shapes folding into themselves. Trees, signs, the old mill. They bent in impossible ways, as if leaning in to show me the path, or to warn me. I tried to call for backup. My voice caught in my throat. The radio only hummed, a warped echo of my own tone. Something moved behind the glass of the mill. I froze. Not a reflection, not a shadow. Something solid, dark, human-shaped, watching. The scanner hissed again. Inside, "Don't enter alone." My hands trembled on the wheel. That was what I was thinking, the exact thought forming in my mind. I hadn't said it aloud. The wind shifted, carrying the faintest scrape of metal, the whisper of feet moving where none should be. I tried to dismiss it. Just nerves, just fog. But the pattern, the timing, the way the call anticipated my every choice, it wasn't natural. Something was orchestrating this, guiding me, waiting. I turned the corner toward the mill side entrance. The call spoke again, quietly. "They can hear you." My pulse raced. Every instinct screamed to stop, to turn around, to escape this unnatural precision. But the curiosity, the need to see, pushed me forward. The cab lights bounced off broken windows, revealing glimpses of darkness inside, shapes I couldn't fully identify. The door creaked under my touch. The scanner buzzed with static. Then another phrase I didn't say, didn't think aloud, but it crossed my mind. "Don't trust the eyes." My reflection, distorted in the cracked glass, seemed almost a smirk. I jerked back, heart thundering, and then silence. No radio, no static, no whispering voice. Just a fog pressing in, the shadows still, the mill looming like a sentinel. My own breathing seemed deafening, echoing inside the cab. I reached for the door again, slowly, cautiously. The scanner clicked, a soft reminder that it had never stopped listening, never stopped knowing. A single step onto the asphalt sent a shiver up my spine. Shapes at the edge of vision moved again, just beyond clarity, fading when I looked directly. The fog twisted. The air was thick, almost viscous. The call crackled back to life, soft and low. "You're here. They've been waiting." I swallowed hard. My heart hammered. I was the only one here. Or maybe I wasn't. The mill's shadow stretched long, reaching out with tendrils of mist. Every rational thought fled. I gripped the wheel, my knuckles white, and realized the call had predicted this exact moment, this exact fear, this precise hesitation. I exhaled slowly, forcing control over trembling hands. The scanner buzzed faintly, almost a purr now, waiting, guiding. And somewhere deep in the fog, I felt it, a presence deliberate, patient, unseen, yet intimately familiar. It knew me, every thought, every move, every step toward the unknown. And as the first real, sharp question struck me, who or what was orchestrating this, I felt the pull of inevitability. Forward was the only choice. Away didn't exist. And the mill, the shadows, the voice, everything waited quietly to reveal what had been tracking me all along. I was halfway down the stretch of abandoned highway when I noticed it, my own reflection, broken and fractured across the side mirror of an old, rusted pickup parked along the shoulder. At first, I thought it was fatigue, the way the fog bent the headlights, warping the shapes around me. But the moment I leaned closer, Squinting, my stomach sank. It wasn't just me staring back. It was me, pale and twisted, eyes wide, mouth stretched in a silent scream. I jerked back, heart hammering. The cab's interior felt suddenly too small, too warm, as though the air itself had thickened. The mirror caught the flicker of streetlights, but the reflection didn't blink like I did. I leaned forward again, cautious, compelled, and the figure mimicked me perfectly, except for the expression, that hollow, impossible scream. I tried to tell myself it was a trick, a shard of glass catching the light oddly. But deep down, I knew the shapes, the angles, they shouldn't be capable of making that face. The radio hissed, static at first, then almost conversational. Hall, look closer. My hand shot out to adjust the mirror, to shut it, to erase it from view. But when I moved my fingers, the reflection stayed, fixed in that silent terror. The hairs on my neck stood on end. Something about the way it held itself, alive, aware, watching, made my chest tighten. I could almost hear the faintest echo of a breath, rasping through the glass. I drove on, trying to shake it, but the image lingered, burned into the corner of my eye. Every reflective surface became suspect. The windshield, the chrome of the bumper, the rain-speck paint of the highway signs. Shadows clung longer than they should, pooling in corners, stretching thin across asphalt, curling at the edges of my headlights. I felt watched, always watched. My own face had become an object of horror, a warning, a stranger I couldn't turn away from. The fog thickened, curling low across the road. Each time I glanced at the mirror, the screaming face grew sharper, more detailed. The eyes, my eyes, glimmer with something unnatural, urgent, and then in the peripheral edge of vision, I thought I saw movement just outside the reach of the headlights. Figures, maybe trees, maybe something else, swaying, folding it on themselves like the world was breathing. I tried to radio in, to call for backup. My voice trembled, caught somewhere between disbelief and fear. The static answered instead, punctuated by that same soft, mocking whisper. They see you, Hall. You know it's true. I gripped the wheel, knuckles white. I had no idea who they were, but every instinct told me, don't stop, don't look back, don't trust the reflections. The next mirror I passed, on an abandoned roadside diner, its windows cracked, yellow with age, caught the pale face again. Only this time, it moved independently. I swear it reached toward me, a distorted hand stretching through the glass, fingertips trembling, almost real. I jerked my head back, and my own hands pressed against the wheel, trembling. My pulse pounded in my ears. I couldn't look away, though every fiber of me screamed to do exactly that. A sudden sound, the wail of tires on wet asphalt behind me. I slammed the brake, my headlights cutting through the fog. Nothing. The road was empty. The air was thick, stagnant, and yet the mirror continued to scream silently. The reflection's mouth opened wider, stretching impossibly, yet no sound came. I swallowed, dry, uneasy. The fog shifted again. The highway stretched into an impossible curve, bending in ways it had never done before. My own mind betrayed me. I slowed, tried to make sense of it. Every time I blinked, the reflection shifted slightly, adjusting, anticipating me. It wasn't mimicking anymore. It was learning, responding. And then I noticed something else. The eyes weren't just pale, they were hollow, black at the center, absorbing light, as if they were windows into a void I didn't want to see. The scream became almost felt, a vibration in my chest, a resonance that I couldn't escape. I glanced away briefly, shaking my head. When I looked back, the mirror was cracked further, spiderweb lines branching across the glass, each fracture catching the fog like it had been carved deliberately. The face didn't flinch. It didn't scream. It just waited, silent, patient, accusing. My stomach turned. I could feel the weight of its gaze pressing through the glass, a pressure I couldn't push back. The fog thickened even more, now rolling over the road like a living thing. Every reflective surface glimmered briefly, then darkened, then shimmered again. My pulse was a hammer. The voice on the radio whispered in fragments, almost teasing, "You can't hide. It's always you, always watching, always screaming." The words weren't loud, but they lodged themselves in my skull like needles. I tried to drive faster, escape the mirrors, the reflections, the impossible shapes. But every turn, every corner brought the same sight. My own face, pale, twisted, unyielding. I caught glimpses in the rear view too. Though the cab behind me was empty, I realized the horror wasn't just a reflection. It was me, or maybe the me that shouldn't exist, staring back at me from the world, mocking the life I still had. I reached a bridge, lights dim, fog curling in rings over the steel. The mirror on the railing caught my eye. The face smiled now, slow and impossible, the kind of smile that bends reality. I shook my head violently. My reflection in the windshield looked normal, for a brief moment, reassuring me. But when I looked again, through the corner of my eye at the mirror, the pale scream was back, closer, sharper, and waiting. The radio went silent suddenly. The fog swallowed the static, leaving only the sound of my own breathing, ragged, uneven. Every instinct told me to flee, to abandon the route, to escape the highway and whatever had started following me. But the curiosity, the compulsion, pushed me forward. I couldn't leave the highway, not yet. Not until I understood what I was seeing, what I was becoming. I drove on, every reflective surface now a potential window into that impossible horror. I realized the screaming face wasn't just a trick of glass. It was a warning, a map, a record of every choice I had made, every corner I had turned, every step closer to something I didn't understand. And in the corner of my eye, the fog seemed to swirl in shapes, moving with me, waiting for me to catch up, waiting for me to blink, waiting for me to surrender. The night stretched, unending, the highway folding in impossible ways. Every reflection I passed seemed to grow sharper, more deliberate. I wondered briefly if someone or something was orchestrating this, if the reflection was a messenger or a predator. And then in one brief, shuddering moment, I realized it didn't need to move. I did. Every glance, every heartbeat, every hesitant turn brought me closer to the revelation I didn't want. And somewhere deep in the fog, I felt the edges of a truth, thin and fragile, just out of reach. The pale face, frozen in silent terror, followed me, waiting, not just in the mirror, but everywhere, in every shadow, in every flicker of fog and streetlight. It was me, but it wasn't, and I had no idea which was the real nightmare. I slammed the brakes, trying to keep pace with the cruiser ahead. The radio was dead again, just static, like it had swallowed the whole county. The streetlights flickered over the wet asphalt, the spray from my tires leaving ribbons of water that shimmered like broken glass. I could see the patrol car up ahead, at first, and then, almost impossibly, it wasn't there, not around a bend, not in the reflection of the mirrors, not in the headlights. I blinked. Maybe it had slowed down. Maybe it had taken a side road. But then, the next one vanished. I should have turned back, should have called it in, but I kept driving. The fog pressed in low, thick and suffocating, swallowing the familiar edges of the road. The hum of my engine was deafening in the silence. No radio chatter, no tires behind me, nothing. My pulse hammered in my throat. I was alone. The highway stretched endlessly, like it had been erased from the map. Trees leaned closer, bending unnaturally in the windless night. Shadows pooling at impossible angles. Every reflective surface, mirrors, wet guardrails, puddles, seemed to watch me. I caught glimpses of shapes in the darkness, the corners of my eyes tricked by movement that wasn't there when I looked directly. I tried to focus on the dashboard, the road, anything normal. My hands gripped the wheels so tightly I thought they'd crumple. The fog thinned for a second, just long enough to make the headlights of another cruiser appear. Just ahead, barely visible. Relief surged. I wasn't completely alone. I pressed the accelerator, feeling the warmth of recognition. But as I neared, the car simply disappeared. Gone, like it had never existed. I swallowed hard. My breath caught in my chest. I tried the radio again, fingers shaking, the hum of static cutting like a knife. The whisper came back, soft and deliberate. Alone now. I spun the dial frantically. Nothing, just silence. The words weren't in the radio. They weren't coming from the speakers. I could feel them pressing against my mind. Inside my skull, a voice only I could hear. The road curved sharply. My headlights picked up another vehicle, parked sideways across the lanes. A patrol cruiser, unmistakable. I slowed. The doors were open. No one inside. I stepped out, fog curling around my boots. Rain-slicked asphalt reflected the harsh yellow of the street lamps. The car was empty, key still in the ignition, radio silent, heart hammering. I felt the first real prickle of fear. Not that I was alone, but that I was being set up, guided, watched. The air felt thicker here. I could taste it, metallic and heavy. Every instinct screamed to get back in the car, drive, leave, but I couldn't. Something pressed me forward, a pull toward the abandoned cruiser. I glanced back. The highway behind me was empty. No lights, no trace of the road I had just traveled. My own taillights glimmered, but beyond them, the fog swallowed everything. I stepped closer and the silence deepened. Even the rain seemed to hush. I could hear the faintest echo of tires on wet asphalt, far away, or maybe just inside my skull. I reached for the door handle, trembling. The metal was icy. Inside, the dashboard lights flickered once. Then everything died. Absolute darkness. A pulse of fear throbbed in my chest. I forced myself to breathe. I had to get out of here. I ran back to my patrol car, slid in, slammed the door. The engine roared to life. A false comfort. I tried to turn around, drive back the way I came. But the road wasn't there. Just fog. Endless, suffocating fog. Curling into shapes, hints of movement, but never enough to see. My headlights cut swaths through the mist, but each sweep revealed nothing real, nothing that made sense. Another whisper. You're the last one. I swallowed. My own words caught my throat. My heart raced. The patrols, every car I'd followed, had disappeared. They weren't behind me. They weren't ahead. They hadn't turned off the highway. They were gone, and I was alone in a void that felt like it had always been waiting for me. I drove on, desperate. Each turn leading to the same barren stretch. Trees leaned closer, the fog thickening like a living thing. Every reflective surface, mirror, window, puddle, held a shape at the corner of my vision, moving just out of reach. I tried not to look, but the shadows had rhythm, subtle movements I couldn't unsee. I felt their gaze even when I refused to meet it. Time blurred. Minutes became hours, or maybe seconds. My tires rolled over a highway that no longer existed on any map. The radio remained dead. The whispers constant, echoing inside my skull, curling around my thoughts, shaping my fear. And then I saw it. A vehicle ahead, another patrol cruiser. Relief surged again. But as I approached, I saw it wasn't a car at all. Just an empty shell, rusted and abandoned. The lights were on, but the interior was black, hollow. And in that hollow, I thought I saw something. Someone watching me. I sped past it, feeling the air tighten around me. The fog curling in fingers that brushed the car, brushed me, brushing the edges of my mind. Every instinct screamed to stop, to turn back. But the road behind me was gone, and I was alone. The highway had become a maze I hadn't known existed, one designed for fear. I tried to shake it off, rationalize it. Maybe the fog played tricks. Maybe I was exhausted. But the empty stretch of asphalt, the missing patrols, the way the trees leaned just so, it wasn't exhaustion. It was deliberate. Something wanted me to feel this, to notice, to see. And the quiet wasn't safe. It was patient, waiting for the next mistake, the next glance, the next hesitation. I gripped the wheel until my knuckles whitened. The fog thickened again. In the corner of my vision, shapes flickered, then vanished. I tried not to look. My eyes burned. My heart hammered. The whispers were constant now. A chant, soft and hypnotic. Alone, always alone. You can't leave. Ahead, faint lights appeared. Another patrol. This time it moved. It rolled slowly across the asphalt. But the closer I got, the less it resembled a car. Its edges blurred, stretched. Its headlights dimmed and grew impossibly bright in the same second. My chest tightened. I pressed the accelerator. The car moved faster, then vanished. The highway curved sharply, impossible angles twisting under fog. The world felt wrong, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't turn back. I realized, finally, the truth. The patrols weren't just missing. They never existed here. They were echoes, mirages, leading me deeper into the void. And I was the only one left, the last thread in a highway that no longer belonged to the living. The road stretched before me endlessly, empty, silent, infinite. My own headlights cut swaths of silver through the mist, but even that light seemed temporary, as though the fog could swallow it any second. And somewhere in the darkness, I felt it waiting, not the patrols, not the cars, something else. Patient, silent, knowing. I gripped the wheel harder, knuckles cracking, but I couldn't stop. The highway had claimed everyone else, one by one. And now it wanted me. I hit the accelerator and felt the tires scream against the wet asphalt. But the road didn't change. It stretched ahead in the same endless ribbon of gray, disappearing into a fog that refused to lift. I checked the clock. 3 a.m. Again. Same as an hour ago. Or a day ago. Maybe a week. Time had lost its meaning. My eyes ached, my hands ached, and yet I kept driving because stopping felt worse. Stopping meant admitting I was trapped. The fog pressed against the windshield, curling like smoke, and the streetlights appeared farther apart than before, flickering, stuttering like they were breathing. I caught my reflection in the rear-view mirror. My face was paler than usual, shadows digging into the hollows of my eyes. But the reflection, something was off. It moved slightly behind me, a twitch in the corner of my mouth I hadn't made. I blinked, and it snapped back into place. Maybe exhaustion, maybe fear, or maybe the patrols I followed weren't gone. They were waiting, watching. I passed a junction I knew well. Ordinarily, it would lead back to town, but tonight it led nowhere. Just more fog. The signs were gone, or maybe they'd never been there. A rusted barrier leaned sideways, a hint of road beyond it that seemed to dissolve in the mist. My stomach nodded. I should turn around, but the rear-view mirror was blank. Behind me, nothing existed. I had been driving in a loop, or maybe a highway that had never existed. The radio crackled suddenly, static feeding into a low hum. I pressed the buttons frantically. A voice whispered, almost coaxing. Still driving, I swallowed. It wasn't a voice from the speakers. Not entirely. Somewhere in a hum, inside my head, the words pressed against my thoughts. How long had I been out here? How far had I gone? My pulse raced. My hands gripped the wheel until my knuckles burned white. I passed an overpass. My headlights revealed a line of abandoned cars. All patrol vehicles, lined neatly along the shoulder. Doors open, engines dead, windows fogged over. A shiver ran through me. I recognized some of them, the ones that had vanished ahead of me. They weren't gone. They were here, or maybe they had never left. I felt a weight settle on my chest, a pressure that made breathing difficult. I looked down at the dashboard, trying to track mileage, elapsed time, anything familiar. The numbers ran backward, forward. They didn't make sense. I caught a glimpse of my hand, white and trembling, and noticed the wedding ring I didn't wear anymore. I'd left it years ago. Yet there it was, catching the faint glow of the dashboard lights. My mind rebelled against reality. Was I losing it, or was the road changing me? Another whisper came, soft and insistent. Forever, I froze. The word crawled across the edges of my hearing, wrapping around my skull like smoke. I turned my head slightly, expecting the fog to yield something, anything, but there was nothing, just endless asphalt, curling faintly under the dim glow of the streetlights that seemed to bend around me. I tried to remember the last time I had seen dawn, the first hint of morning, the gradual bleed of pale gold over the horizon. It never came. Every turn, every mile, the sky remained the same, gray, heavy, unbroken. The highway stretched forward, unchanging. I passed familiar landmarks that should have signaled home or a town, but they were twisted, warped. Signs leaned at impossible angles. Trees arched unnaturally. The familiar had become alien. I began to notice the shadows, creeping at the edges of the headlights, shapes that flickered just out of focus, always at the corner of my vision. When I tried to look directly, they were gone. When I turned my head, they returned, crawling along the fog. I could hear faint footsteps on wet asphalt, but my own tires made no sound beyond their monotonous hum. I started talking to myself, voice trembling, demanding answers that didn't come. Hours, or maybe minutes, passed. I stopped checking. My eyes were dry, my mouth parched. The steering wheel burned my palms. But I didn't care. My brain had begun to register patterns in the fog, shapes in the emptiness, whispers in the static. And then, faintly, in a reflection on the cracked passenger side mirror, I saw them. Dozens of figures, standing just at the edge of the fog, shadowed, indistinct, yet unmistakable, watching, waiting. Each patrol I had seen, or thought I had seen, stood there, silent, pale, impossibly still. I swallowed. My heart hammered like a drumbeat in my chest. I wanted to turn, wanted to leave, but the road didn't allow it. It bent and curved, always forward, looping back in impossible ways. The fog didn't part. The dawn didn't break. And the whispers never stopped. Forever, forever, forever. I passed a curve and glimpsed something I should have recognized. A gas station, shuttered, lights dead, signs hanging, ask you. But the windows were lined with patrol logs, thousands of them stacked neatly on counters. I saw my name in each one, different dates, different shifts, different versions of me, dead. Each file labeled with the same title, Graveyard Shift. My stomach churned. I didn't exist here, not as a living person. I was already a ghost in this endless patrol, already part of the logs that chronicled shifts I'd never survived. Panic clawed at me. I pressed the accelerator. The tires screamed. The fog thickened, curling like smoke, and the shadows moved closer, gathering, pressing against the edge of the lights. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. My voice was swallowed by the fog, just like every other echo of life around me. The road twisted, impossible turns bending under my headlights, but the car stayed steady. I thought about stopping, turning the wheel hard, slamming into the fog, but even that felt meaningless. Every exit I remembered, every shortcut, every town, it was gone. The patrol had become infinite. I was on a loop I couldn't escape, a shift that would never end. I glanced at the rearview mirror again. My reflection stared back, pale, hollow-eyed, mouth open in a silent scream. Behind me, the fog had thickened to a wall, and faint outlines of patrol vehicles pressed just at the edge of visibility. I realized with cold certainty that they weren't following me. They were part of me. I was part of them. The shift had claimed me. I gripped the wheel, my vision blurred, the road stretching and folding into itself. Every mile felt like an eternity. I felt my own body fading into the emptiness, becoming another log in the endless patrol. And the whispers grew louder, circling my mind, filling every space. Forever, graveyard shift. Forever. The horizon remained gray. The fog pressed closer. The highway stretched into nothing. I was alone, but not alone. The patrol surrounded me. Shadows pressing against the glass, reflected in every mirror, every puddle. My headlights revealed nothing but repetition. The same road looping over and over. The same shadows shifting at the corners of my vision. I realized the truth. There would be no dawn, no end, only the endless night, the eternal highway, and the patrol that would never release me. I drove on, always forward. My reflection twisted, pale, silent. The whispers followed. The patrol logs waited. The road never ended. And in the distance, just beyond the edge of the fog, I thought I saw headlights. But I knew better. The shift had claimed them, claimed me. The eternal patrol had begun.